Hello, welcome to another edition of the Punch Show. We are on Thursday, and I have done a show every day this week, so it looks like I'm getting back into rhythm. So that's good news. How's everybody doing today? Got Harry. Hiya, Harry. Sugar says, Harry says, hello, how are you? Sugar says, being this earlier to stream feels illegal. Don't worry, it's perfectly legal. But that is just as long as my stream is legal. If Trump keeps going the way he's going, he'll probably outlaw my stream before too long because, Trump does what Trump does. KK. KK. I like that. I like your name, KK. And she's actually on Twitter. So, or I'm sorry, X. When we used to, when Trump tried to make Gulf of America a thing, I was like, yeah, you can everybody will start using a name if you change it. Just ask everybody on Twitter. So Harry's good. So anyway, last night, as long as we've got Harry here, I got to thinking that Trump is always saying that the U.S. is paying more than everybody else in NATO for their defense and that it should match. So I got to thinking, what if, hear me out now. Some people misunderstood my comment. What if we evened it out? And I don't mean the UK started paying more. What if we paid less? We pay a lot more of our income or a lot more of our GPA. If you look at defense spending as a percent of GDP, that's what Trump is always talking about when he's talking about, paying their fair share and whatever. So if England and the US, if we matched England, that would mean cutting our defense spending about 27%, which would save around $250 billion a year, which is almost what our shortfall is with Social Security. So we could bring our defense spending in line with NATO and have enough money left over to even out our Social Security deficit. And they're always saying, oh, the only way we can make up for Social Security is if we reduce benefits. And so now I've got to work an extra 2 to 5 years before I'm allowed to retire so that Elon Musk doesn't have to pay any taxes. So anyway, some people misunderstood that and thought I was, parroting Trump's claims about, defense spending or paying our fair shares in NATO and whatnot. Wow. I made some kombucha. That one's a little bit sour. Anyway. Harry says, what did you think of the VP's press conference yesterday? The VP had a press conference yesterday? What? I didn't even know that. Let me look this up. Yesterday after the show, obviously during the show, I'm not looking at the news. I kind of tuned out of news. So okay. So I guess it was about what's going on in Iran. I've more or less stopped listening to anything the Trump administration has to say about the war in Iran because they just lie about everything. Um, so when the war is over, it will be over. And this is my consistent thing. When both sides say they agree on the same thing that the agreement is on, then that is an agreement. By definition of the word agree. Like if I tell my wife to do the dishes and she doesn't do the dishes, I can't go back later and say, we agreed you were going to do the dishes. And she can say, no, I didn't. We didn't because I didn't agree with that. Do your own dishes. Agreement requires both sides agreeing to the same thing. Only good news today, Alligator Alcatraz is closing. Yeah, I think that's actually going back a couple of days, but yeah. Where are all the people that were running a victory lap around Alligator Alcatraz anyway? And they were all gloaty and happy about how like stripping away human rights from human people was. It was disgusting. Currently, the U.S. spends 3.2% of GDP on defense, which equates to around $954 billion, but he wants us to spend 5%. Effing hypocrite. And here's the thing: I think you're right. U.S. spends 3.2%, and I think UK spends around 2.3%. And so, if we, or is it 2.3 or 2.6, something like that? I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't remember, but it comes out to about $250 billion a year in a prorated difference. And if we were to cut our defense spending, we would by 27%. If we were to cut it dramatically like that, we would still by a rather large margin spend more money on our defense than any other country in the world. Like we spend more money on defense. I don't know what the latest figures are, and probably going to be worse because they want even more money for it. But we spend more money than like the next 40 countries combined. And at some points, we have spent more than the entire world combined outside of the US. I was just spending my precious time trolling maggots. All you have to do to troll a maggot, I don't like to use the word maggots because I think it's dehumanizing. But to troll a maggot, all you have to do is say something true. Forgiven by the blood of cross, 3 nails, 1 cross, forgiven, healed by the. Yeah, this is not a religious channel. I'm a Christian. I don't think that doing stuff like that, Joseph, I don't think that really. Like if your interest is in preaching the gospel, this is not the way to do it. We spend 2.3%. So I was right, 2.3%. Currently, we went to 2.5% by the end of this parliament. So by 2029. It would be nice if we stopped trying to make enemies for everybody. It would be really nice. It would be really nice. Except for to give him credit, he's made friends with Kim. He's made friends with Putin. What do you guys think about there was this whole thing that came out where, somebody like a historian, he said a historian said he was the most powerful man in the history of the world. So I don't like Maggie Haberman. She can be a little bit annoying with her MAGA on the street interviews. But anyway, looks like this book has some value in it. It's with Swan. And they wrote this book. Now, really get, like inside the White House, they had, they had recordings and stuff. I mean, what I think is interesting about this book is while there's some really critical things in there, the White House is not challenging a single thing. That is a single detail that's in there. So they must have some serious receipts. So anyway, Trump was bragging about how he was the most powerful man in the history of the world, according to a historian. And then, so Swan tracked down this historian, and it turned out the guy is a caddy for a golfer. I forget which golfer. Not I forget the name of the golfer. Gary Player, I think. Anyway, he's just a caddy who is a history buff. It's not like a real historian. But the other interesting thing is the other people on his list of the most powerful people in the world were like Hitler. And it's like, okay, it's okay for Gary Player's caddy to compare you to Hitler, but when I do it, I'm all bad. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. So yeah, he's making friends with people like Putin and Kim and, the authoritarian dictator Hitler types. But he's burning bridges with Italy and England and like every country that has ever been our friend. And then 3% by the end of the next parliament, so 2034. Our highest expenses right now are Social Security and helping foreign nations. Is it? All right, first of all, I want to. This is irresponsible rhetoric. Our highest expenses right now are not Social Security. Social Security is a separate budget. You can't sit there and confuse that with what we're paying for our federal taxes. Social Security is a retirement savings that we put money into. There is a separate tax for it. There is. So get away from me with this little MAGA talking point. Go read a book and then we can talk. But I'm not going to engage with an argument that has a false premise. Following politics is neurotic. Okay. There are other channels. Go ahead. I don't know what makes it neurotic. I think that ignoring politics is sticking your head in the sand. You live in a country, you should at least be aware of what's going on there. Like yeah. Starmer resigning. We talked about that yesterday. At least Trump was there to announce it for him. I wonder why they don't. Why, who doesn't what? I'm sorry, I don't understand the. So Tom says, LOL. I don't know what he's LOLing about. So some guy says things and this dipshit thinks it's true. No. It's some guy. Okay, so I assume you're talking about the thing with Swan. Swan went and talked to the caddy. Donald Trump bragged about it, gave him the paper. Swan went and figured out who wrote it and interviewed the caddy. Because you don't want to believe something is true doesn't mean it's not true. Because reality looks unfavorably at Donald Trump, you can't reject that reality. Okay, I'm a simpleton. Okay. Touch grass. You notice the lack of specificity of anything approaching an actual logical argument here. This is the MAGA way. When you can't actually refute something, then you either just deny. Well, just because somebody said it, it doesn't mean it's true. Yeah, that's just a dumb comment. And then touch grass. Yes. Like the people that are MAGAs are actually out there engaging with touching grass. The ones that are denying actual reality are the ones saying touch grass. It baffles me that he thought Meloni was going to take his side of the Pope. She's the prime minister of Italy, for goodness sake. Yeah, there is that, gee, where is the Vatican? If you've never been there, it's actually very beautiful. But I'm not going to deny that the Catholic Church has its own problems. Have you ever heard anything about Trump getting some sort of secret health drugs? I don't know what's going on with his health, and nobody else does. I have thought about this. There's HIPAA, right? So if he lies about his health results, his doctors can't. Even if they're not sycophants, his doctors can't legally say, Well, okay, the reason he's got all this bruising going on is this. But he is clearly not a healthy individual. That's like to say he's in perfect health or that he's 15 years younger than his actual age. No, he is not. He is not like 15 years younger than his age. That man is not well. He's not mentally well. He's not physically well. Look at the debt calculator, dude. What about it? A idiot is a man who doesn't even bother looking into what someone says and just accuses them of. Dude, I already know about Social Security. I don't need to look at the calculator. I already know about the debt. I don't need to look into what you said. I already know what it said. What you said is wrong. I don't need to like go and prove it. I don't need to stop in the middle of my stream and go look into what you said when I already know what I'm talking about. Social Security is its own thing. In Social Security, you go and look at your paycheck if you ever get one. There is a line there. You pay a separate tax for Social Security. Up until the 80s, the government couldn't even touch it for anything but Social Security because people were concerned once all those baby boomers start retiring, we're going to have a problem. But we allowed the government to borrow against that Social Security fund so that Ronald Reagan could keep jacking up the debt to pay the defense spending so that his little iron triangle could keep getting funded. How about you go look it up? You're not the one doing a little streaming. Instead of sitting there trolling, go learn something. For broader national economic comparisons, the biggest expenses in the U.S. federal budget are... Again, you are not understanding things. Yes, we spend money on Social Security, but again, there is an actual specific tax paid for that. It is kind of a mandatory retirement savings. Learn what you're talking about. We spend money on it, but that money we invest it. Like that is money that is ours. That money is not just like a discretionary funding. That money was taxed specifically to pay Social Security. Do you understand how Social Security works or what it is? You're talking about the most basic elemental thing about Social Security. You can't compare that to just federal spending, which is discretionary. So he says he doesn't even like Trump. I don't care if you like Trump or not. We're talking about Social Security, not Trump. Learn what you're talking about with Social Security. I believe stereotypes exist. I do too. New here. Aside from you disliking Trump, are you a Republican or a Democrat? I would say I'm more aligned to being a Democrat. I don't know if I'm a Democrat, but I definitely am not a Republican. I would say I'm somewhere between DSA and Democrat. My dream is like you end up getting the Republican Party is gone and you have a Democratic Party and you have a DSA party and those two work things out because I'm kind of in the middle of those things. Nobody is saying we don't spend more money on Social Security. I don't know how many times I can say it, dude. Social Security is not a discretionary spending. It has its own thing. You can't compare it to stuff that we decide to spend money on. It's not about how much money we spend on it. We are taxed a Social Security tax so that we can get Social Security when we retire. That's what it is. That's how it's set up. It's a retirement program. It's a federally mandated retirement program. I stumbled on some story about Eli Lilly supposedly doing some sort of medical trial medicine. I'm sorry, I don't know anything. I'll look into it if I remember. Yes, Social Security is different from the normal budget. It's like I don't know how many times I have to explain that to him. Harry's from England and he knows more. He knows that. Republicans are Nazi child molesters. I don't know if they're all Nazi child molesters. I think that a significant percent of the administration seems to be. Seems like there's an awful lot of these people that were pals with Epstein. Not from you, Lolo, LOL. I don't know what that means, Courtney. I'm sorry. U.S. defense it's like 3.4% of GDP, 3.2%. Social Security is not a literal Ponzi scheme. There's do you even know what a Ponzi scheme means? Like, it's nothing at all like a Ponzi scheme. It's completely not a Ponzi scheme. You don't seem to know what the words you're using mean. I'm worried about the pension bubble. Post office is not paying into theirs now. This was something created by the Republican Party to undermine the post office. Back in when Bush was president, I believe. They forced the post office to overfund the pension program. So that because the post office up until then had been making money. Now, in the last 25 years, we've had the post office is not making money anymore. It's losing money, but because of what it is. And remember, some people don't seem to realize this, but the post office is in the Constitution. And it was literally a socialist program. And like it is a government run and operated company, which is why Republicans hated it, because it was really good, really efficient, really cheap, and it was making money. But then along came email. And when email came along and people started using email, people started using less mail. And when you have less mail, you have less stamps. When you have less stamps, you have less funding for the post office. But the same mailman, whether you have one piece of mail that day or 12 pieces of mail that day, still has to go to your house, still has to run the same route. So the price or the scale didn't match. Like there wasn't a corresponding drop in cost of running the post office as there was a drop in how much money the post office was getting from stamps and whatnot. And then you had other things like FedEx and UPS and stuff that started to grow. Like when I was a kid in the 80s, if you needed mail, you got UPS, USPS. That was it. Like, and then I think it was around, like somewhere around then, FedEx maybe started, like overnight delivery. But yeah, so now the USPS doesn't make as much money, but what it does do is it goes places where other companies won't because they're not profitable. And it delivers things that people need, like medication, to veterans that live in rural communities. So it's essential, and it's in the Constitution. But the Republicans hated it because they didn't like the fact that it was proving their entire philosophy that government is bad wrong. So they forced this ridiculous pension plan on it that no private company would ever do, and that's where all the pension stuff stems from. Thanks, Reddit. That point 2 is covered in my like. Okay, 3.2. I don't mind stereotypes in a comedic setting. I think they are only harmful if you are publicly, for no reason, going out of your way to reinforce it. I think we'll get to this in a minute. Stereotypes like they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, those are not okay. I think stereotypes like MAGAs need to wear hats to remind themselves of who they voted for, those are okay. It would only be a Ponzi scheme if a third party got the money. But in perpetuity, this would be paying citizens, so I disagree with your assessment. It's discretionary spending still. It is not. Social Security is not discretionary spending. Like, I don't know. Do they still teach this stuff in school? Now we have problems with cities like Philadelphia making late payments. I haven't looked into that. I'll look into it. Maybe there's something new that I don't know enough about. I invest how much to get what out, and the age to get it is what. All those questions have answers that you can readily Google and find out. And it depends on how much you make. And it's not meant to be tit for tat, you know. And to some degree, yes, how much you get out of it depends on how much you paid into it over time. And you have to like make a certain number of tax payments to get it. Certain vocations like ministers can opt out. But the whole point was, for those who apparently don't know anything about Social Security, what happened is the Great Depression. Okay. And after the Great Depression, we instituted, thanks to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who also had his faults, like locking up, Japanese people for being Japanese people. I'm not trying to excuse everything he ever did, but Social Security was still a good thing. And what Social Security is something economists call an automatic stabilizer. And what it is designed to do is limit things like another Great Depression. So that if everybody loses their savings and the stock market crashes, elderly people still have money that comes in. They still have money to live off of. It's like, I don't understand why people have issues with Social Security. And then when I start asking questions, it almost always seems like they don't really understand what it is or how it works. Stupidity is a choice. MAGA people choose to be stupid just to get a rise. My wife gets mad at me sometimes when I say people are stupid, but this is what I mean when I say people are stupid. Exactly this. I don't think stupid as being like you don't have the mental capacity to apprehend a thing, to understand a thing. But when you choose to just not learn a thing, that to me is stupid. It's obtuseness. There's a word, if you ever read a book by Stephen King, good book. It's February 22nd, 1963, I think is the title. I'm not positive on the title, but I think it's the date. But that's the date that JFK was shot. And so the book is about this guy goes back in time and finds this, closet. There's a closet and a hamburger restaurant that if you walk through the door, you go back into 1959, I think it is. And so he goes back there and he's going to stop the JFK assassination. He lives there for 4 years, and then he stops Oswald from assassinating Kennedy. Sorry if you haven't read it and you were going to read it, and now I spoiled it. But anyway, in the book, it keeps talking about time is obdurate. And I didn't know, I had never heard that word. Obdurate, what is obdurate? And so I looked it up, and it means like stubbornly unchanging, and it just, every time I think of MAGA, obdurate just seems to be such a perfect word for them. That's no matter what happens, no matter what they do, no matter what Trump says, even tries to overthrow the country, no matter how racist a thing he says or does, they just cannot change their mindset about him. Oh my God, people who don't understand you pay Social Security taxes, which is the money, and then whatever people receive entitled Social Security. That's why it's referred to as an entitlement. Not because you have a sense of entitlement, but because you are literally entitled to that because you put money into it. Nobody said money went to a third party. They take the money from the fund. You put the money into Social Security, and then you're supposed to get it back from Social Security. What happened in the 80s is we were spending money so fast. You look at before, I think Reagan like almost quadrupled the national debt. Like you want to go back to where, tax and spend really started happening? Well, he didn't tax, but he still spent. The spending went way up under Reagan. Like Republicans, either they don't know it or they want to pretend it didn't happen or whatever. Especially defense spending and GE. And anyway, that's a whole other thing. But anyway, spending went way up under Reagan while he cut taxes. Now, if you go and if you get your pay cut and you get a reduction in salary, and then you go up and you start maxing out all your credit cards, you're going to have financial problems. And that's what happened in the 80s. And so we had so much debt that we're like, how are we going to, what are we going to do? And then they say, oh, well, let's borrow against Social Security. So that Social Security money that all those boomers were paying money into, they started borrowing against it. Now those boomers are retiring. That money is not there because we already borrowed it. And that's why we have issues. They take money from the fund. It isn't paid for through the general budget. The only thing Congress sets is the amount of an entitlements are. Right. Your monthly fund and how much you get, which varies depending on how much you put into it. Kids are not my thing. Not a Nazi. Yeah. See, so like Walter is an example of a Republican who was not a MAGA, if I remember correctly. Facts. Oh boy, is what? I don't. MAGA is using USPS as an enforcement agent for. Oh yes, and so this is. Thank you for bringing this up. Is it L? Is it pronounced L or Ellie? L. Can I call you 11? No, I'm just. Stranger Things joke there. So MAGA is using USPS as an enforcement agent for his policies. Yeah, so he wants to force states to hand over their voting rolls, which is illegal and unconstitutional. And if they don't do it, he's telling the UPS they can't deliver mail-in ballots in those states, which is also illegal and unconstitutional. And I'm going to use these words because they are true words. It is election interference. He talks about election interference all the time. Stealing ballots is election interference. And if he's telling the USPS to not deliver ballots, that is election. That's election interference. That's stealing ballots. Those people cast those ballots legally. Those ballots should be counted. They prepay retirement. Yeah, that's kind of a way of looking at Social Security. Or are you talking about the USPS? It's because the UPS has to prepay all the pension funds. Yes, this is what I'm talking about. It put them behind. The post office went to parcels. The problem is the contracts USPS is in. Source, they can't own their own planes. I don't know what you're asking for a source for, Sleepy, but the internet is vast. If there is something that you don't know, feel free to look it up and see if it's true or not. I think the post office problem is that nobody writes and that is a big part of it. Nobody writes letters anymore, and you don't even get magazine subscriptions delivered. It's just junk mail bills. Internet changed all that. I got magazine subscriptions. I had a regular Sports Illustrated subscription for like 20 years. I don't need one anymore. I just read all my sports news online. What about the stereotype 99.999% of Americans are thick as poop? I have puns, but I won't go there. Are you burnt peanut? I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I imagine it's some sort of insult. A lot of people do get their prescriptions and stuff mailed. Yes. And that's the problem. Because USPS or UPS and FedEx and stuff, that is expensive, and they're not going to do it for free. But yeah, if you're a veteran with diabetes in the middle of nowhere, Texas, you need your medicine. And again, I cannot emphasize enough. The post office is in the Constitution. Can I have some of your money? Sure. I pay it in taxes all the time, and you get some of it. I know one thing that's a scam. Publishers Clearinghouse, they went bankrupt. No more lifetime payments. Oh, I didn't know about that. I do know that if I probably owe Columbia Records and Tapes some money. How many of you, raise your hand? I can't see you. Raise your hand if you owe Columbia Records and Tapes some money. How many albums did you get from Columbia Records and Tapes? That's willful ignorance. I don't know what stupid is when you don't have the capacity to learn and are proud of it. Yeah, that's what MAGA does. No, your 5G COVID shot destroyed your brain cells and your touch with reality. They're numbnuts. Yeah. The thing, I'm a little disappointed in my 5G COVID shot because I was hoping I could cancel my phone subscription. I still have to pay for my phone, though. And Social Security tax is capped at about $165K. So if Jeff Bezos and Musk pay the same into SS as an ordinary professional, right? And that's like one of the actual solutions to Social Security would be raise that cap or just remove it. Problem solved. Can you go ask your boss to give you a 25% pay up? Oh, is that how they say pay raise in England? Pay up. And then also spend 2 times your new salary. Right. Reagan was a gold-plated bleep who did far more irreparable harm to the U.S. than most people realize. And you know what? Ronald Reagan didn't stop the Cold War. Mikhail Gorbachev did. But that's another show. Reagan lowered the marginal tax rate for the richest from 74% to 30% and then taxed all future SS payments. Right. And guess what? I mean, that's why I say when you talk about Reagan, that's why I say, like, with liken it to if you go and you ask your boss to cut your pay and then you max out all your credit cards. He didn't just start borrowing more money than anybody else. You know what? I think it was before Reagan. I think when Carter left office, I may be wrong on this, but I don't think I'm off by much. The national debt, not deficit, the debt, the total money the United States owed was $600 billion. When Reagan left office, it was like $4 trillion. I have to do this. Well, I would imagine you wouldn't be a very good Republican if you disagreed with me on Reagan. But I'm still right about the fact that under Reagan, that's when we started borrowing against Social Security. Under Reagan, he drastically cut the top marginal tax rate, and he also started spending a lot of money. And then there was a whole thing called an iron triangle, and that he really embraced. And the iron triangle was like 3 points to a triangle, right? And so you have the lobbyists, the executives in the executive branch, and the government executives, the lobbyists, and then you had the people in Congress. And so, like, you would run for office, you'd become a representative, right? And then a lobbyist would court you and fund your things, and you'd make all this money off the lobbyists. And then once you resign from office, then you'd go and you'd join the company and get a chair board or something, some kind of funding from there. Or you would be a member of the executive branch and you'd get all kinds of favors done there. And then you'd go to so there was like the same people that would be in these 3 groups: the lobbyists, the government, and the corporation. And they had this relationship. or be the same people just sitting there bilking the taxpayers for like billions of dollars. And we talk about fraud. That is the fraud. Pattern recognition is not racism, right? So when I see people that have sunglasses sitting in their driver's seat with these profiles that keep saying stupid racist things, I assume that they're racist. But anyway, I don't know where that came from. Why? USPS is it's not a federal branch. Okay. Did somebody call? Hey, Brett, did somebody call for crowd control? Crowd control to Major Brett. You are the one I'm looking at. Almost rhymed. But yeah, I'm glad you're here. So, Brett, I added Harry to the moderator team yesterday. So, yes, I can. If an American citizen puts a ballot in an envelope and mails it according to law, then they are cast legally. That's the entire issue. No, the entire issue is that people are lying. Donald Trump doesn't get to decide. Like, let me explain this to you because you don't seem to be very sharp. The Constitution lays out who decides how to run elections, and it's not the post office. It's the states. Donald Trump wants to tell states how to run elections. He is not allowed to do that. The framers didn't accidentally leave the president out of the process of deciding how elections are run. They did it on purpose because they didn't want kings. Rainbow Kitty! Woo! Hey, buddy. I was just thinking about you yesterday. I was like, man. So I started back a little bit last week, and I think I'm back. This is Thursday. I've been on every day this week. I think I'm starting to get back into my rhythm. I just needed to take a break, but I'm back. I'm glad to see you. Somebody was asking about the other kitty yesterday, and I was like, no, she's been around, and Brett's been around, and Harry's been around, and I'm like, but I haven't seen Rainbow Kitty yet. So now. No, you just stated an empty, hollow opinion. You stated that they were illegal. There, you have zero evidence that every single ballot mailed in California is illegal. There's no evidence of that, and it's not true. So go sit in a corner. You're on timeout. Go think about what you've said. You've been a bad boy. We're not engaging in sophistry here. So you're on timeout. Go sit in a corner. It's been a while. How's it been? All right. That mail-in ballots aren't properly cast. Your propaganda is not a given fact. Right. Yeah, we're not engaging with your little nonsensical, silly arguments about whether or not the mail-in ballots are legally cast. The president of the United States does not get to decide which ballots are legally cast. It's moot. There is a process in place to decide if they're legally cast. The United States mail doesn't get to decide whether to deliver those ballots or not. There's nothing in law that allows for that. And the court today told them that. So sit down, take your thumb out of your mouth, act like a grown man, and learn something. I'm really tired of this racist nonsense. That just because a Democrat won, illegals came and rigged it. The USPS does not answer to the president. The USPS answers to the Constitution. The USPS literally does not answer to the president. Like, there is nothing in there that says that. I don't know how to explain this in ways. I mean, Harry isn't the one that's confused. USPS has a board of directors that it answers to. The president of the United States does not have control over the USPS. That's just a completely wrong statement. I agree it should be a one-day election, but to make that work, you would have to pass a law granting workers the right to take as much time as reasonably necessary to vote. I don't agree with a one-day election because not everybody can take one day, and there's no reason to have it one. Like, there's no logical reason. Like, if you have there's no harm in having it more than one day. I think you should just have elections that maximize the number of people that can vote. The president's orders to USPS can never be unlawful unless the Constitution. Yeah, the Constitution literally says otherwise. It says that the states decide how to conduct elections. It's all laid out in the 14th Amendment. Feel free to read it someday. Okay, yeah. All right, we're getting rid of this guy. I just, once he starts going into COVID was done on purpose, you're not worth engaging with. You're just a silly little propagandist. So yeah, we don't have that guy around here anymore. If we weren't allies with Israel, we could have saved over 20 trillion tax dollars. But more importantly, over 5 million people globally, including over 40 Americans, would still be alive. I don't know about those numbers. This seems a little bit of a reach. I disagree with the way Israel is conducting things right now and Bibi, but I'm not going to use that to go on some kind of anti-Semitic rant. Like, I think there is a place for Israel to exist without Israel existing in the way that it is existing right now. I think Jewish people have been persecuted for 2,000 years, and persecuting Jewish people even more is not the answer. I don't know how much more clear to be than that. I have a Jewish friend who is just as liberal as I am. And he told me, why can't we just be safe, go somewhere and be safe? And he said that after the DC shootings of a couple of Jewish people who were actually pro-Gaza. So it's like, I think we need to figure out how to resolve the situation with Israel and Gaza. I don't think hatred of Jews or of Palestinians does that. A federal court has ruled that this directive is an unconstitutional overreach of presidential authority. On June 25th, 2026, U.S. District Judge Indira Tawani officially blocked the Trump administration's executive order. The order attempted to block the United States Postal Service from delivering mail-in ballots to voters who were not verified on a new federally compiled voter list. Only the U.S. Congress has the power to alter federal election laws or change the statutory obligations of the U.S. All right, so just going to browse down and see. Rainbow says, understandable. I also needed a break from it all. Plus, it's Pride Month. That's right. Congratulations. I love it when people are like, what about Street Pride Month? And it's like, there's 11 other months of the... And it's like, not like anybody ever tried making straight illegal. Although to listen to the self-victimized MAGA crowd, you'd think that right now people are being arrested for using, cisgender bathrooms or something. My grandmother was a chief postmaster. My grandfather was a chief postmaster. My father worked for the Postal Service also after he got into the military. I have an uncle that was a postmaster in California. He was in charge of the whole San Jose, San Francisco area. I think he's retired now. I think Congress as a whole is a joke. Over 87% of US people are in favor of voter ID. Okay, I don't know what this is supposed to mean. Over 80% of people are in favor of voter ID. That is a totally different question than the SAVE Act, which is where I imagine you're going. The SAVE Act is not about voter ID, and there's a difference between a voter ID and voter ID. Like most, like there's and the question is ambiguous. It was run by a right-wing partisan group that asked a very partisan question and it's framed in a very partisan way. It is such a totally meaningless poll for what we're talking about. For those who don't know what the SAVE Act is, the SAVE Act is not about voter ID. The SAVE Act, one of the issues with the SAVE Act is that you have to prove citizenship when you vote. The problem is not everybody has proof of citizenship, even if they are a citizen. So without getting into a whole lot of stuff, I'll just put it this way. Arizona has a law like this that only applies to the state. They tried to make it so that it's state and federal elections, but the Supreme Court said that they couldn't set this standard for a federal election because they're federal, not state. And that standard is not in the Constitution. Or that Congress would have to set the standard. I'm sorry. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that you have people in California or in Arizona that are registered to vote in the state, but are in the federal elections, but can't vote in federal elections because they simply don't have access to their proof of citizenship. These are not people that they're not too dumb. Like, oh, you're saying black people are too dumb to get their birth certificate. No, that's not what I'm saying. And like, this is the argument of a coward afraid to learn. All right. There are people that don't have access to their birth certificates because birth certificates don't exist for them. There are people, believe it or not, born in the United States who never got a birth certificate when they were born. And there are people in the United States who were born in the United States that got birth certificates when they were born, but then that birth certificate was destroyed through no fault of their own. So, like, a big example is Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana. A lot of people in Louisiana don't have access to their birth certificate because what happened is Hurricane Katrina. And that destroyed a lot of the original, the hospitals and stuff where not all the birth certificates were digitized yet. And so they simply don't have access to a birth certificate, these people in Arizona. And if you project the percentage of voters in Arizona across the nation who are legal U.S. citizens, but just don't have birth certificates, there's about 2 million people that just don't have birth certificates. Other than that, they're born in America, they're American citizens, they're over 18, they have the right to vote. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to have a birth certificate to be allowed to vote. And that's what this law is trying to say. And okay, there's other, you can have a passport. Well, you can't get a passport without a birth certificate. So right now there is you can just swear under the penalty of perjury that you're a U.S. citizen, and then that counts. Want to clarify one other thing. There have been people busted as non-citizens for voting illegally. But they didn't get arrested. They didn't get charged with perjury for signing the piece of paper. They had fake birth certificates. So the SAVE Act wouldn't even prevent them from voting. That's one of the issues with it. Is it disenfranchises millions of Americans, literally millions of Americans, on the pretext of stopping something that isn't even happening in any meaningful way. The Heritage Foundation wanted to prove how ubiquitous this voting was. So they set up a database. They absolutely endeavored to find every case of voting fraud over the last 45 years that they could. And they could only find less than 100 cases of undocumented people or of non-citizens voting. Not all of those were even undocumented. Less than 100 people that are undocumented have voted over 45 years. That's not swinging elections. We don't even know how they voted. And the ones that they busted, the SAVE Act wouldn't have even prevented because they had fake birth certificates and fake passports. They used fake documents that are allowed by the SAVE Act. Okay, that's problem number 2. Problem number 3 is there are a lot more people, somewhere around 40, 50 million, if you depends on how you count it, that have birth certificates but not immediate access to them, or else they'll have like a birth certificate but their current name is not the same name that's on their birth certificate. The states would have to set up some sort of system to where they could validate that this says Gina Robinson, your driver's license says Gina Stallworth. Yeah, that's not you. It's not like there's an adult picture of you on your birth certificate, right? So there's some confusion. I think some people on the left have maybe amplified this beyond what's real, like the real issue, like made it seem like if you got married, then you can't vote. Like that's not true. But you still have to jump through hoops. And one of those hoops, this is another major issue, is to update your driver's license or to update your registration. You have to go in person to the DMV and say what your issues are, or and do it there. So like if you moved, just change the address. I used to live here, now I live there. Same state, you have to change your address. Used to be, or like the way it is right now in most states, only 2% of people that update their voter registration do it in person. 98% of people do it online or by mail. The SAVE Act wants to say you have to do it in person. Okay. So if you've ever been to DMV, you didn't have a good time. So you have to that becomes a tax, right? You have to take that time. That time is a tax. Sometimes that time is not just a tax on your time, it's a tax on your money because you lose wages to go there. That's like a Jim Crow type of tax. Fourth problem with that is there's no funding for it. The DMV, you're adding millions of people that have to go to DMV to do these little things. That takes personnel. That means the DMV is either going to be they're going to be overworked. Not like there's not lines there already. So that's what we called in the ACA an unfunded mandate, and what Republicans used to call unconstitutional. That's the fourth problem with it. The fifth problem with it is even the things that Congress is allowed to do by legislation. They are doing things that are supposed to be the states doing them. The states decide some of the things that the SAVE Act is trying to save. So it's unconstitutional for that reason also. So there's several ways in which it is unconstitutional, but to sit there and dumb it down to voter ID laws, which what voter ID means varies. If it doesn't mean a picture ID, it's not a specific type of ID. When I voted in Illinois one time, I lost my driver's license. I was able to show them my voter registration card and a utility bill that showed my address on it. That was ID. I identified who I was and I was able to vote. And it didn't make me a non-citizen. So yeah, get your SAVE Act out of here. Not a reach, a lie. I don't know. I'm sorry, Christopher. I don't know what that was in reference to. That was a very long rant ago. I hope I didn't. Anyway, apologies. Show me where you got your 80% figure. There's like a right-wing poll where they kind of ask the question disingenuously. Like, should you have to identify yourself before you vote? And like, by the way, your driver's license does not constitute a voter ID. It would not work for most people unless you specifically paid for a driver's license that says you're a citizen. Take out your driver's license, and if it says you're a citizen on it, then you would already know that because you already paid for it. And it's only allowed in 5 states, and you have to pay extra. If you don't live on the border of Canada or Mexico, there's definitely no chance. They're there as like a mini passport. So that, like, if you don't want to carry a passport around with you, you can carry, and you got to go back and forth across the border all the time, you can just show them your driver's license. That's what it's supposed to serve as. Israel is only 80 years old, mate. Because the U.S. Congress answers to rich people and super PACs. Yes, that much is true. It's not racist if it's a compliment. Yeah, I don't know if so. I got to get to the whole point of this show at some point. So let me I'll start steering into this now. So here's what I'm, people are responding to the title of today's show, which is it racist if you don't admit it? Today, if you haven't heard, temporary protection status was removed for people from Haiti and Syria. And these were not people that came here illegally. These people came here illegally. They were never illegal. So let's just clear that up right away. Everybody that is on temporary protection status is here legally and has work authorization. They're not living off the government dole. They have work authorization. A lot of them actually work in the healthcare industry from Haiti. And this is like if you have a loved one in hospice or in a nursing home, it isn't really going to impact those two industries because there's a lot of Haitians in both of those industries. But this is the dissent on this is really worth reading. But basically, the Supreme Court said they didn't say it's legal for Donald Trump to do what he's doing. They're saying that there's no judicial review for what Donald Trump is doing. The actual reality is there's no judicial review on ending protection status from a country. So like to say Haiti no longer has legal protection status, right? But the law itself stipulates these things must be done in order for the president to be able, or, in order for protection status to be removed, which is why there's no judicial review, because it's legislatively established what happens. The problem is those things did not happen. It is incredible that the Trump administration would, one, have you believe that Haiti is fine now. It's no longer a danger to return to if you're a Haitian. Yet, It has the highest warning for citizens for a travel advisory. They tell you, don't go there. It's too dangerous if you're an American citizen. But at the same time, they're telling Haitians, go back there. It's fine. So which is it? This is why there's legislation about what needs to be done before TPS can be removed. It's a disingenuous Supreme Court reading. And if you read the dissent, Brown, is it Brown? I think it's Brown. Jackson. Anyway, read the dissent. It's clear exactly what she's saying. And the other part of that is that the Supreme Court said, there's, unless there's constitutional grounds. And then said there's probably there's not any evidence, there's not sufficient evidence to show that this could be overturned on constitutional grounds. Racism would be constitutional grounds. And so they're saying there's insufficient evidence of there being racism. But there was plenty of evidence that it was racist. Like they presented evidence to the court that this was racially motivated, including the words of Donald Trump, which came from Adolf Hitler. He literally said the same thing that Hitler did. And they're like, well, that doesn't mean it's racist. It's only people of color that are affected by it. And it's just like with the gerrymandering thing. Well, they didn't deny them, seats because they're black. They did it because they're Democrats. But yeah, it ends up being the same thing. Black people don't have representatives anymore. Tomato. It's like you're saying it's okay to be racist as long as you don't say the R word. But if you say the R word being racist in this point, because they don't have any problems with the other R word, is if it's DEI or something like that, to where you're saying this is racist, therefore we must we need to do something about it. If you combat racism, that's the real racism according to this Supreme Court. 95% of the people with pilot's licenses, 95% of commercial pilots were white men. Does anybody really believe only white men are qualified to fly planes? So anyway, it was obviously racist. And the Supreme Court just said, well, there just wasn't evidence. It's like if you went, like imagine you're a juror on in a murder trial. And the prosecution comes and they sit there and they show you, here's the dead body. Here's the gun that was used. Here's the defendant's fingerprints on the gun. Here's a video of the defendant murdering the witness. Here's DNA evidence. Here's the motivation. Here's when and how he did it. And they do 2 weeks of just nonstop evidence. And then it's the defense attorney's turn. The defense attorney just stands up and says, this is insufficient evidence. And I rest my case. And that's it. That's the whole defense. You think the jury's going to go back and go, well, the defense said it's not sufficient. The fact that the Supreme Court wouldn't even engage with the evidence is to me what's the most problematic thing. The Supreme Court wouldn't even acknowledge the evidence was there other than to say it was insufficient. Trump quoted Hitler. He accused Haitians of eating cats and dogs. He called countries. He said things like, basically, why do all our immigrants or all these, people come from black countries and not white countries? Now, he said Africa and Norway, but we know what he meant. That was a dog whistle so loud, you don't even need to be a dog to hear it. Yeah, Donald Trump is racist. This decision is racist. And I'm not saying that dramatically. And, you get Republicans that sit there, oh, anything you don't like is racist. No, there's plenty of things I don't like that aren't racist. But you can't just use that as an excuse for everything that's racist. So, anyway, let's go back to the comments. How am I supposed to show you where I cannot send links? I have something, look it up yourself. I can't help it if you can't send links, but you could state a fact and tell me where it is. Just tell me what website. State the fact. I'll look it up online right now. I'll look it up with you. God's chosen don't choose themselves. Don't type what you can't prove. I know it to be true. You just have to. What to be true? Tell me what to look up, Dr. Dredd, and I'll look it up. I'll look it up right here live. I'll go and I'll ask ChatGPT with everybody watching if what you say is true. And if I prove it's, and if I did, if I don't agree with, I don't even know what it is. I might think you're right, but yeah, it is kind of. Isn't the American flag a pride flag if you think of it? It is. I mean, the voter ID issue is a non-issue. I did not know SAVAC, did I? Now you want to change it. Oh, you're talking about your little 80% thing. Okay, what was the point of, how is that Congress a joke then? What does that have to do with Congress? If it's not the SAVE Act you're talking about, what does it have to do with Congress? Why do both sides of the voter ID argument always frame it as such a dispute? It's not a voter ID argument. I don't even framing it as a voter ID argument is disingenuous to me. It's not about voter IDs. Everybody agrees American citizens should be the only ones that are doing the voting. That's it. Everybody agrees that you should only vote if you're the person who you say you are. That everybody agrees with that. The argument is not about that. About voter IDs. There's no voter ID argument. There's an argument about what you need to do to establish your right to vote. No one is running around with fake IDs trying to vote, especially when voter turnout is not even 25%. Here's the thing, and Walter is completely correct here. So back to the Heritage Foundation thing. I think it's less than 1,500 total cases of voter fraud of any type over 45 years. And that includes, city elections, school board elections, primary elections, presidential elections, congressional elections. So billions of votes out of billions of votes over 45 years. There's 1,500 cases of voter fraud. It is an incredibly rare thing. And most of the time there is voter fraud. It's actually in very local elections where it might actually make a difference. And a lot of times it's being done by the candidates trying to stuff ballot boxes or whatever. Some of it is unintentional. Sometimes there can be confusion over whether somebody has a right to vote. If you're an American citizen, I want to say this right. If you're an American citizen living in Puerto Rico, you can't vote for a president. But if you're a Puerto Rican American citizen living in Puerto Rico, I want to make, I think I have this right, but correct me if I'm wrong. Or there are some places maybe where if you're there, you you can vote, but if you're over here, you can't vote, or the other way around, or something. I don't remember the details, but there are some people that can vote in some places and not in others, and so that can get confusing. And so sometimes there is just an honest confusion over it. There's other things like where felons weren't allowed to vote, and then they were, and then they weren't. Cry more, your parties are a joke. Okay. That was a really, what is the point of comments like this? Honestly, who can't or doesn't have access to ID legally? Lots of people. I went through this in great detail. And it's not about ID. It's a birth certificate. Don't IDGR married women change their name when married. I need 2 forms of ID that match your legal name, meaning your birth certificate is no longer a valid form of ID. But there's some stuff in the bill that says that the states can determine how to do that. So like if a woman brings her birth certificate and her marriage certificate and her driver's license to DMV, then she can get it all worked out. But she has to go to DMV to do that. And DMV has to supply the personnel to do that. So it's still an extra hoop they have to jump through. So even if they're, even if it is resolved, it's still a tax on that person. Peasant pilgrims. They technically weren't because there was no law against pilgrims. I don't IDGR what percent of voter fraud occurs in the U.S. Tell me what percent. It's like 0.00001%, I guess. What is okay? 2 billion. So 1,500 is 7.5 times 10 to the -5th % of 2 billion. So a number so small that we don't even have a name for it or word for it. I mean, it has become more of a pride flag as of late. Yes, American patriotism is it's almost like that it's just become a hate symbol, in all honesty. Well, you got the "you're" right. I don't know what the rest of that is. But congratulations on joining the war on apostrophes. Prideful peasant pilgrims. When you see MAGA put flag out, tell them Happy Pride Month. Trump didn't want to pass the bipartisan affordable housing bill because he wanted the SAVE Act passed. Yeah. And here's the thing. Like, if you are a regular on this, watching this show, you will know I am a solution-oriented person. And I have said over and over again on this show that what really bothers me is that we can't talk about the actual problems. Can't talk about actual solutions because we don't address the real problems. Like, there is no problem with voter fraud. Like, that doesn't exist at all. We're sitting there spending all of this time and energy debating something that is not a problem. And we're creating a problem of disenfranchising millions of people to solve a problem that doesn't exist, because the real problem is Donald Trump knows he is doing so many illegal stuff. If the Democrats take over, he's going to be a thrice impeached president, as he should be. And he knows it. So anyway, just based on his illegal war with Iran, which the cowards in Congress, the Republican cowards, can't even own up to that. Can't even just point out, I'm sorry, the Constitution says that Congress gets to decide when we declare war. But anyway, they're cowards. But the affordable in its defense, Congress did the right thing with the affordable housing bill. They worked together to solve an actual real problem. Good for them. I mean that. Both the Democrats and the Republicans that worked together to resolve what is really a big issue. And both sides had input, and both sides really had things to say and contributed to it. This was how our government is supposed to work. But then little Mr. Narcissist decided that the more important thing was to disenfranchise millions of people who weren't going to vote for him. Except the problem is they're not just going to not vote for him. They're also, they're not going to vote for Republicans either. Republicans get married too. Republicans know that. The Republicans in the Senate know that passing the SAVE Act is going to keep people from voting for them. Not just against them, but for them. That's why some of them don't want this passed. Even if you got rid of the filibuster, I don't think the bill could pass. But good on Congress for getting that bill passed. Bad on Donald Trump for not signing it. Any state or county courthouse has records. They filed income taxes that prove their driver's licenses. Military has records. No, they don't. The USC states. I don't know what all that's about, but it has nothing to do with the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act says specifically what counts as proof of citizenship, and none of that is in there. Even military ID, you can go in there and show I'm a member of the military. I'm active duty military. That does not count as proof of citizenship because you don't need to be a citizen to be in the military. Or tell them you like their pride flag. Oh yeah, that's that. Oh, that's some grade A trolling right there. Calling the American flag a pride flag. What happened to the certificates in Arizona? Tornado? Different things. There's all kinds of natural disasters that happen or people that weren't born. I don't need to identify why all, the hundreds of thousands of people that don't have birth certificates in Arizona don't have them. There's no law that says you have to have a birth certificate. They're not doing anything wrong. Who cares why they don't have them? They don't. Please stop the what I'm trying to stop the misinformation. That's why I'm correcting it. If I'm saying something wrong, tell me what is wrong. I'm happy to engage and look up things, but this is just like I will from now on. Oh, well, that's actually fantastic. Oh, yeah. Mainly Republicans. What is IDGR? I'm sorry, I don't know what IDGR is. If a married woman changed her name, she no longer can vote if she doesn't have two valid forms of ID. It all depends on the state and what they decide. The SAVE Act is indeterminate on what it establishes the state has to, figure out how to handle this. So each state could do something different. So it's a stretch to say that if your marriage certificate doesn't match your birth certificate, or if your driver's license doesn't match your birth certificate, then you can't vote. You just have to establish that you got married and this is your new legal name. But you have to do that at DMV if you haven't already done it. That's UR history. I don't know what that means. Hey, Dusty. Man, we're getting the whole crew back together today. So, Dusty, you were asking about Rainbow Kitty yesterday. Rainbow Kitty is back. The 2 million you reference are illegals. Yes, it would. They were not. That's just, that's IDGR. Yeah, none of that is true, IDGR. That's just not true. That has not, you really have no idea at all what you're talking about. People are given driver's license in sanctuary states so that we can know that they know how to drive. That doesn't mean that they can go vote. Even in sanctuary states, you have to prove you have to be a citizen to vote. Illinois does not let you vote if you're not a citizen. And when I went and registered to vote, I showed them my birth certificate. Save a Erica Act can stop over 60 million from voting. Oh, Save America Act can stop. Yeah, I don't think it'll be 60 million, but I think it could be like a couple of million. I think it would force like 60 million people to go to DMV and update their voter registration. There is no funding available for the states. And to me, this is maybe the smallest of the arguments, but it's the easiest to win in court. It is an unfunded mandate, and unfunded mandates are unconstitutional. And what I think is beautiful about it is this court has already said you can't do unfunded mandates. But you're telling the states they have to pay for this. They have to pay for those extra DMV workers to handle all of this extra work. That's an unfunded mandate. That might not be the most sexy argument, but it's the easiest one to win in the Supreme Court. The last administration caused this to be an issue. No, the last administration did not cause this to be an issue. It's so funny. If the last administration did all of this stuff to rig the elections, why did we lose the election? Did you turn your cousin in? What your cousin did is against the law. All these MAGAs seem to know people that are voting illegally, and they never seem to care enough to do anything about it. Why is it only MAGAs know people that vote illegally? They also know MAGAs that are committed. They have friends that are committing fraud, sitting there living off of welfare checks. And, you know, it's funny how they all know people that do all these things. Seems like if we got rid of MAGA, we'd get rid of all the criminals. I live in a fairly conservative state, so it shouldn't be hard to find one. Still, okay. Still way too many. This is okay. How many people are you willing to disenfranchise for every illegal, every non-citizen that votes? What is the trade-off? If a million, is it okay to like disenfranchise 1 million people for every non-citizen that votes? How about 100,000? Because it starts to feel like you don't actually care about whether or not American citizens are allowed to vote. It's whether or not your side is going to win. It's incredibly rare. Call me a fruit. So I'm just going to call you fruit. She's right, or he's right. Fruit. I guess fruit isn't it. Fruit is right. It's an incredibly rare. And this is another thing that people don't think of is there is a risk-reward factor involved here. The risk, if you get caught, especially if you're a non-citizen, you are going and you are signing your name on a piece of paper, and you're saying, and you've got your address on that piece of paper, and signing that piece of paper that your address is on is an actual crime, right? Very easy to prove. You are almost guaranteeing that you are going to have your life destroyed if you are caught. And for what? Add one vote to millions? There's almost no chance at all that it's going to matter that you did that in the grand scheme of the election. But there is a really good chance you destroy yours and your entire family's life if you do that. So the risk is extremely high and the reward is really low. And that is why it's not just not happening. It's not a concern. People don't do it. It's just not worth it. The payoff doesn't match the risk. Just for people's information, states are not legally allowed to enforce immigration laws. And that's true too, which is another thing. The whole thing about sanctuary cities, people don't seem to understand what that is. People don't even, like MAGAs really don't understand what they're talking about most of the time. All sanctuary cities mean is is that you're not turning over your police to ICE, basically. In Minnesota, they made all this stuff up. There was not one single case where Minnesota refused to turn over uh, an immigrant to ICE from prison. It was all made up. It was all over just fiction. States are under no legal obligation to help the U.S. federal government enforce immigration laws. They are also, so this is the other thing, is that the SAVE Act says that states need to turn over their voting rolls to the federal government to be reviewed by this system that they have that determines whether or not you're a legal citizen. The problem is that system they have has already been proven to have like a 20% error rate, and it keeps saying people aren't citizens that are citizens. That's the first part of the problem. The second part of the problem is so that they can say that 20%, they're not allowed to vote. You have to take them off your voting rolls. So then they get stripped out the voting rolls. And there's no guarantee. Like you could get taken off in November, and a week later you go to vote. You don't even know you were taken off. They don't have to notify you and tell you were taken off. And then if you were taken off wrongly, there's no appeal. There's no conditional ballot that you can file. You just lose your right to vote because this stupid, unvetted, crappy program that's also illegal, federal government's not allowed to monitor who's allowed to vote in different states. The whole thing is just brazenly unconstitutional. I'm not making up anything. Ronald, he's not, go look it up. I'm not. I mean, it is there. I've looked at it. I made videos about it. I'm not making this up. Trump just wants to eliminate women from voting because they got married and it's a different name. There's a lot of really inappropriate jokes I can make right now. Fruit says, yep. FYI, America is the #1 crackhead country in history. Prideful and stupid. I don't know what that means. If you're suggesting we do more crack than any other country, I imagine that's true, but it's not like crack has been around for a long time. It's only been around for like 40 years. And we definitely have more drug problems than most countries. States have a right to not help the U.S. federal government enforcing its laws, known as the anti-commandeering doctrine. It's so funny. How does Harry know more about American politics than MAGAs? I hate the smell of crack. It always smells like burning electrical wire. I've never smelled crack. I've never seen crack. You could walk up to me and hand me crack, and I'd be like, "What is this?" I'm kind of innocent that way. How did they get jobs without an ID or get? You can have an ID. You can have a driver's license. It has nothing to do with IDs. It is a birth certificate. You don't need a birth certificate to get a job. Who said you don't need a citizen? Not everybody that doesn't have ID needs assistance. My goodness. This is not a theoretical discussion. There are people in Arizona who can't vote because they don't have access to a birth certificate. That's not a theory. It's not an abstract thought. It is a definite reality. Look it up. Normalized, says T. Tapao Tet Tet Tetapu Tet. I can't say that. We're just going to call you T. Save me embarrassing myself. The U.S. Supreme Court firmly established this doctrine in cases like New York States versus United States and Prince versus United States, 1997. Unless you're in Kentucky, you can pay $300 to a nonprofit and they'll magic you a driver's license. No, you can't. And that driver's license won't let you vote anyway. I forget that once I changed my legal name, I have to go get a matching ID. Ugh, that's going to take forever, isn't it? And it's going to be worse. DMV is going to get a whole lot worse. Again, 2% of people that update their driver's license or voter registration right now do it online or by mail. So imagine how much busier your DMV is going to be. As though it's not already busy enough. I told this story before. I have a friend, she got mugged. And she told the muggers, look, I won't even, just let me keep my driver's license. Don't make me go to DMV. I won't even call the credit card companies for 24 hours so that you can go, like you won't get busted or anything. I won't turn you in. I'll give you 24 hours before I, cancel my credit cards. Just give me my driver's license, please. They wouldn't give her back her driver's license. They ended up getting arrested. But that's how much people hate going to DMV in Chicago. Like, it's terrible. Like, she risked her life to not have to go back to DMV. The federal government can pass its own laws, but it cannot commandeer state officials or state police to enforce those federal laws. So that's getting back to the immigration thing. What if I don't have a license? Then you can get a state ID, but the state ID or the driver's license don't matter. Neither one of those is covered. I can't emphasize this enough. Your your state ID, whether it's a driver's license or just a state ID, is not sufficient as proof of citizenship, because you don't need one. You don't need a birth certificate to get one. Now, a birth certificate is one of the IDs you can use to get one. I've had some people like, oh, and they show me, oh, look, here's the birth certificate is, one of the documents that's a valid proof of ID. I know that it's there. That's how I got mine. That doesn't mean you have to have one. There's a list of documents that you can use to get a driver's license. You don't have to be an American citizen to get a driver's license. I don't know why that's so complicated to people. And you don't have to have a driver's license to vote. Nullification. This is the unconstitutional theory that a state can declare a federal law completely void within its borders. States cannot do this. They may only refuse to enforce, not nullify. All right. How is mail-in ID any more secure than mail-in voting? Who cares? Mail-in voting is secure. Well, I don't even know what mail-in ID means anymore. I don't even know what you mean by that. Like, it's such a... I don't know what you're talking about. What's unconstitutional is illegal immigrants voting, period. No, that's not the only thing that's unconstitutional. Everybody agrees you should be a citizen to vote. Nobody is arguing that non-citizens should vote. The problem is non-citizens aren't really voting. Period. Only China benefits from not passing the common sense. Oh, now we're getting into China. How does China benefit from us not? Like, why do you guys have to resort to these really weird arguments instead of something that's actually cogent? There is no such thing as racism. Yes, there is. Although, if you really want to talk about racism, here's something that's interesting. There was a time when there was no such thing as racism. A lot of people don't know this. If you go back to the 1500s, racism didn't exist. There was no such thing as racism back then. Racism is the product of sub-Saharan slavery. It is not the birth of it. And I think that's an important distinction. We don't have racism. We didn't have slavery because the Europeans were racist. Europeans used racism to justify sub-Saharan slavery. Before that, like the Queen of Ethiopia would be treated like any other queen. You read, like fiction writings from then, or the black people were not considered inferior. But once slavery became an established thing, sub-Saharan slavery, then you started seeing writings to justify owning black people. And they started to say black people were inferior. So that's how we got racism. So don't say racism isn't good, isn't real. Okay, so somebody says, that sounds good to me, Chunky. I don't know what sound. I'm sorry, because I ramble, and so I don't know what I was rambling about when you said that sounds good to me. Great mind think alike, Brett. So you just decided you're gonna split the middle on the your there, huh? Like the Y-O-U-R-E without the apostrophe. But you used a possessive. Wait. Yeah, you used it as a possessive, not a. Anyway. He's your white systemic governance says otherwise. Horse poop, they get food stamps and Section 8 as well as healthcare. No, they don't. They don't. I think that you are a misinformed person. I will tell you this, and you can either receive it and learn something, or you can just go on believing the nonsense. What happens is you have right-wing think tanks that conflate undocumented immigrants and non-citizens with households that have non-citizens. So let's say that you have, Juan and Juanita. Juanita is here legally. Their kids are all born here. Juan is a non-citizen. So Juanita and the kids, they get SNAP benefits. Juan doesn't. But Juan lives in a household where American citizens get benefits. So they want to say that Juan is getting benefits. He doesn't. That's how they get this lie that non-citizens are getting those. They are barred by law from getting benefits. Racism lives in your systemic lives. Racism exists in like all kinds of nooks and crannies of the American society. People just don't like to talk about it. All this guy does is spread lies. And yet you can't tell me what I am saying that is untrue. Yeah, it's Spreed. What is Spreed? It's like when you lie really fast. I guess you spread lies really fast. I have a need for Spreed. Trump is the goat. Yeah, I agree. He's about as smart as a goat. It's the same poop hole it's always been. We have the Constitution. We follow the Constitution. Yes, we have the Constitution. We follow the Constitution, which, by the way, says that the states determine how to run elections. And nobody, again, is arguing that non-citizens should be able to vote. I don't know what you're talking about when you say they are illegal aliens. People that came over here on TPS were not illegal aliens. They were here legally. I mean, I know they're black. I know Haitians are black by and large. That does not make them illegal. It's not illegal to be black and an immigrant. Trump is a citizen, wanted to overrule the Constitution. Yes, he did. Like Donald Trump rise to political fame was all premised on a lie about somebody being a non-citizen, in case you didn't know. He wouldn't even take a birth certificate as proof. So, yeah, now, you need a birth certificate. Shut up. He just wants white people to vote. Yeah, that's such a weird comment because when I see Donald Trump, I do not see love. Don't forget the slave trade. Now, the slave trade is why we have racism. Racism is not why we had the slave trade. I think that is really something people do not understand, but should. There's a woman named Fields. I can't remember. Janet Fields, maybe, wrote some books on this. Worth taking a look at. 100% Maximus. Thank you, sir. My apologies to you. That's okay. Hopefully, in 3 more years, Democrats can appoint more judges to the Supreme Court to override. Yeah, this is, I'm, like looking ahead. And I want to say it was Pete Buttigieg, maybe. Just came out and said, we need to do, like, he's come out and said, we need to give DC statehood, Puerto Rico statehood. We need to give, we need to balance out the Supreme Court so that it reflects our society. And so he wants to go to 13 justices, which I think is valid. Add 4 more, and it's a 7-6 court. Have you ever heard of jury annulment? Yes, jury annulment is actually illegal in the United States. Conditions in Haiti are such that the soccer team, but how do you enforce that? Conditions in Haiti are such that the soccer team hasn't played on the island since 2021. Haiti is a really, really dangerous place. Getting sent to Haiti could be a death sentence. Did you see the MAGA Sean Duffy with his Down syndrome daughter right next to him on the stage call people libtards? I did not see that, but that is shockingly not shocking and disturbingly disturbing. He said something else. I can't remember what it was. Sean Duffy. Am I the only one that thinks Duffy sounds like the name of a Simpson character? We need new blood in the system and term limitations so these positions rotate in a proper time frame in all branches of government. We have term limits. They're called elections. But it's interesting. I mean, anything you do with that is going to require a constitutional amendment. Which with America this divide, I don't think a constitutional amendment is even possible. That's why we haven't had one. I think it's the longest we've gone without amending the Constitution. What I find baffling in America is you all hate your Congress, but re-election rates couldn't be higher, so they obviously can't be bad. It's like a famous thing, and it's like, I hate everybody else's congressman. I hate my own. McCall is terrible. I can't stand him. I vote against him every time and lose every time. People question the results. As a result, Donald accuses people of what he does. Yeah. Donald Trump is like, you could play a movie on your wall with Donald Trump. He's such a projector. Voter ID isn't a bad idea, but it should be free and easy to obtain. Why is it even necessary? Like, that's the thing. It's going to be free. Even if it's free for people, it's still going to cost the government money, and there's just no reason to do it. There is just not enough in-person voter fraud to justify all that money. It just doesn't happen. And it's like, why are we spending national time and energy? It's like, you look at voter ID, like all the and then trans people in sports, all these things, all these issues that the Republicans want to spend time with are either not problems or they're such small things that it doesn't warrant the amount of energy and money and debate that we throw into it. We have more laws against trans women in sports than we have trans women in sports. It's a very, and it's like, why make it, like, literally it used to be an expression, right? Why do you have to make a federal case out of it? And that's what I want to ask. Why do you have to make a federal case out of it? Why is it such an issue to you that a cisgender woman or that a transgender woman might use the women's bathroom? Why do we need to make a national law about that? People in Puerto Rico cannot elect senators, cannot vote for president, but they can elect a non-voting delegate to the House of Representatives. So that's what it is. But I think if you have a Puerto Rican citizen, like if you have a Puerto Rican living in Texas, they can vote for senators, but not if they're living in Puerto Rico. And I think sometimes, like maybe they were, they moved to Florida when they were 5, and then they moved back to Puerto Rico when they were 25, and they've been able to vote before, and they didn't know they weren't allowed to vote anymore, and so they voted, and illegally without intending to vote illegally. But if you go from Puerto Rico to any normal U.S. state, you can vote for the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the presidency. Hello. If you're going to vote, they should make you put in a microchip in your identification card at the polling place. Can you sign, and you sign out with the National Guard? I have no idea what that means, but I know if you're going to put the National Guard in polling places, that's illegal. Like, you can't do that. 1 vote per household? No. That's just a big no. This is like circumventing the women's right to vote. This voter household thing. Yeah. If you want to do that, then you go ahead and do that in your house. Practice what you preach. Tell your wife not to vote, and only you're allowed to vote. Your wife isn't allowed to vote, or you're allowed to vote. Or, okay, Mark, your wife isn't allowed to vote. But don't tell me what my wife can do. So what about apartment renters? Yeah, and this is one of those things where it's an issue, right? Because if you move, you have to change your voter registration and go to DMV. Who's more likely to move? People who rent or people who own their homes? People who rent are far more likely to move, especially over like a 4-year period, right? So who is more likely to rent? People that make less money. So it disproportionately affects poorer people. Poorer people tend to vote Democrat. Did the person cleaning head of household? Yeah, that's nonsense. We're not going to debate that. Who in the household has the right to that 1 vote? Oh, the guy that the man does. And I mean, that's just not in the Constitution, buddy. You go ahead and get the Constitution changed, and then we can talk. But right now, that's unconstitutional. The Brennan Center for Justice, a landmark comprehensive review of American elections, calculated the overall incident rate of voter fraud to be between, and this is all voter fraud, not just non-citizen voter fraud, to be between 0.000003% and 0.00025%. A person is statistically more likely to be struck by lightning than to commit voter fraud. So I actually looked this up and kind of did the math on it and worked it out with chat. Your chances of getting struck by lightning are greater than your chances of standing behind somebody than that's a non-citizen that's voting, right? Your chances of getting eaten by a shark are greater than standing behind somebody in line that's a non-citizen voting. Your chances of getting struck by lightning while being eaten by a shark are about equal with standing behind a non-citizen voting. That's how rare it is. That math don't lie. If you're worried about non-citizens voting, you should be worried about getting struck by lightning while being eaten by a shark. So I don't ever want you to go to a beach or walk outside when it's raining. What if more than, oh, he's talking about in your tax returns. Only one person can do that in the tax. But it's all nonsense anyway. You'd have to require a constitutional amendment because the Constitution doesn't say anything about that. And the Constitution says women can vote. Constitution says men can vote. So that's just a bunch of bogus nonsense. Massachusetts Constitution says nothing about only one person per household can vote. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a 20-year study focused specifically on mail-in ballot fraud, found that it occurred at a rate of just 0.0000006% nationally. Grammar is rough and chat because a lot of people are using voice to text. Yes, I tend to give people a pass on the voice to text thing, but sometimes, like, voice to text isn't making your errors. It's usually getting the your right. And I really only make fun of people if they get the your wrong, and especially if it's like you're an idiot and they say you are an idiot. I call it the war on apostrophes. The Strait is closed. Blue paint is peeling. No video evidence of vandals. And by the way, the people that are doing the work, they say there's no evidence of vandals. East wing of White House is in ruins. A tarp covers the Kennedy Center. White House lawn is destroyed by UFC Arena. Winning. And those are just like the peripheral issues. Inflation is over 4%. I think it's went up to like 4.2% now or something. New inflation report. It's unemployment is up. Real wages are down. Hospitals are closing. But Elon Musk is a trillionaire. So somebody's winning, but it's not you. 60% of Pennsylvania residents still do not have real ID. Real ID does not count, Walter. Even real ID, people think real ID counts. Real ID lets you fly on planes. Real ID does not let you vote. You have to have on, like, I don't think even Pennsylvania, I don't think Pennsylvania is even one of the states that has an ID available that lets you vote. Only 5 states do. I can't remember which they are, but they're all on the border. They're either the Canadian border or the Mexican border. Just say only men should vote. It's obviously what you are thinking. Right. And if he could get black people to not vote, he'd be on that one too. Unless they're voting for Trump, I guess. Bipartisan housing bill wants to build more houses while the population... Because people that want to buy houses don't have houses to buy, Mark. It's really not that complicated. Like, you have, like, do you look this stuff up? Like, if you're really wondering what's going on, why don't you look it up? There's this whole vast internet thing that you can go, well, gee, if the population is declining, why is there a housing crisis? That's something that you can look up. You don't have to ask rhetorical questions that have a different answer than you think. You could have saved yourself from being humiliated by just looking it up. But the reason is corporations, one of the big reasons is corporations are buying up all the houses so that working couples can't buy homes. They're overcharging, they're overpaying for the homes and then renting them out. So if you're a working class, you can only afford to rent a house. You can't afford to buy a house. And people that want to buy houses, like, buying a home is a way to build wealth. It's the way to build wealth for most middle-class people. You're putting equity into your house. With rent, you're just putting equity into somebody else's house. My good, look it up. Yeah, and it's not like we don't have a homeless issue too. Okay, read the Constitution, buddy. The Constitution says Congress has the power to declare war. All right, Mark, we're not, I'm sorry. Did he pocket veto or just veto? The housing bill would have introduced more bureaucracy. Okay, I have a hunch that you don't know what you're talking about. The whole point of the housing bill, one of the things the housing bill did was actually specifically address too much bureaucracy. Like, one of the reasons that we have a housing crisis is people aren't building homes because there is too much bureaucracy. So they tried to cut away some of that bureaucracy. I mean, my goodness, MAGA just believes whatever. Okay, so Fox News just defends Trump all the time, and they'll lie to do it. And then you have people like Tyler and Mark that just believe all the lies and regurgitate them all over all the YouTube streamers. Read, expand your knowledge base beyond Fox News and OAN or whatever it is you get things. You are promoting. No, I'm not. I'm not promoting any lies. I'm telling you things that are true. You can look them up. Or unless you're talking to Mark. You want more population but less immigration? Pick a lane. Why do I have to pick anything? I'll pick your nose. Don't have any problem with that, I'm sure. America has to decide if it wants to keep avoiding the burden of raising their own raising children. What a you're Mark, have you ever read a book? Have you? Trump and admin promote the lives. Open the Trumpstein files. All right, we're just skipping over Mark. He's not. You don't get to dominate the conversation with silliness. Thousands of illegal voters who went from the U.S. were found to be on voter rolls in Tennessee. No, that's not true. And how much time do I want to spend on this? Okay, first of all, being on a voter roll doesn't mean you voted. Being flagged on a voter roll doesn't mean that you were illegal. This is a conflation that the MAGA likes to do. All right, so I lived in Illinois, and then I moved here to Texas. When I moved to Texas, I did not tell Illinois, I don't live in Illinois anymore. Take me off the voter rolls. I never voted in Illinois after I moved to Texas. So eventually, I assume Illinois does their reviews, said, oh, this guy doesn't live here anymore, and took me. I don't think I am registered to vote in Illinois anymore because I haven't gotten any Illinois voter registration cards. I used to get one every year. I don't get them anymore. I'm assuming that's because I'm not registered in Illinois anymore. They go through and they purge the voter rolls because people move, people die. That does not mean that illegal voters were on the voter rolls. But when they take off 2,000 people or whatever that moved or that died, people like Tyler here want to act like there was something nefarious about that. There's nothing nefarious about registering and then dying. The problem with the modern generalizations is they can't imagine modern generations. So they can't imagine being able to support kids when they can't afford to move out of their parents' house. And the problem with that is it's not their fault that they can't afford to move out of their parents' house. So did he say the N-word now trying to claim he's not racist? Did he? I don't know. I haven't heard about that. If he did. But when you say only immigrants, when you sit there and you say, when you quote Hitler on your immigration platform, then you're racist. Like, when you say that immigrants are poisoning the blood of the country, you're a racist. We need the younger generations to procure our future with Trump and his wealthy cronies. Tyler, stop spreading misinformation. Those were people that didn't respond to the letter. Oh, so this is another thing. Yeah, this is like there was somebody did a study on they did this survey where they asked OBGYN doctors if life begins at conception. And they sent out like thousands of ballots. And they got back like 20. I don't remember the number. It might have been like tens of they only got back a tiny percent of the ballots. And then the people that sent it back believe that life begins at conception. And so then they said this percentage of doctors, believe that life begins at conception. And they used that to prove that science says life begins at conception. When most of the people that didn't believe it, the 95% of the people that don't believe that, thought it was a junk survey and throw it in the trash. So this kind of thing. Does giving birth to our own population mean? I don't engage with Mark. He's just a silly little fellow. I meant without Trump. I'm sorry. I'm not clear on what you were talking about before. It's easier if you include the context of your comment, because I want to address and honor each comment, unless it's like Mark, where it's just disingenuous psychobabble. But I want to give each comment credence, but if I'm reading it 5 minutes later, I won't remember what the context was. So if you can include context of what you're talking about in your comment. We're trying to do something about, but every step of the way, it's Democrats halting that progress. No, what you're trying to do is disenfranchise people because they're Democrats. And that's why Democrats want to halt it. You got people like Mark sitting there going that only the men folk should be able to vote. You can't argue with idiots. They just don't accept facts. Bill Murray, allegedly, it's attributed to Bill Murray. Whether he actually said it, I don't know. He said, it's hard to win an argument with a smart person, but it's damn near impossible to win one with a stupid person. Incredibly rare. What your steak? I like my steaks actually medium rare. Only people that have a specific stake in the nation should be able to vote. Well, I think if you live here and you're a citizen here, you have a stake in it. I think people that go to steakhouses have a stake. I think everybody else has a stake, S-T-A-K-E. S-T-A-K-E, stake, not S-T-A-K, Mark. If you're going to sit there and condescend to people, tell them when they're allowed to vote, you should at least learn how to tell the difference between a piece of meat and an actual steak. How does India Raman get 24,000 votes after election day and Spencer Pratt got 0? Well, it's actually very easy. Nobody got any votes after election day. What happened is one person got, and first of all, okay. This is just such a stupid, loaded argument. What happens in general? I don't know about your numbers. Like, did Spencer Pratt get 0 votes? No, he didn't. But what happens is you have the president of the United States that endorses somebody like Pratt that is saying mail-in voting is evil. Now, if you voted on election day by mail, you voted on election day. It doesn't matter if the mail is there or not. You put the mail in the mailbox. When you file taxes, if you file your taxes on April 15th, You filed them on time, regardless of whether they get to the IRS on April 15th. If it's postmarked April 15th, you filed your taxes on time. If it's good enough for paying your taxes, it's good enough for counting your vote. And so what happens is you have a disproportionate number of people that vote for by mail who are more liberally inclined, because people like you are sitting there insulting the genuineness of voting by mail. So you don't vote for by mail. The reason Pratt got fewer votes by mail is fewer of his voters chose to vote by mail. And that's why the votes that arrive by mail, I know this is hard. The space-time continuum is hard for MAGA. But if you voted before Election Day, your vote could get there after Election Day. You could have people that actually vote before Election Day and actually have their vote counted after Election Day. That does not mean that their vote should not count. Wow. How is it that hard? And I bet you're one of them, Mark. Show me where Liberia, West Africa is on a map. Show me where Germany is on a map. Show me where Canada is on a map. Yes, Joe Biden got 81 million votes. That's a fact. Putting a question mark on it doesn't change it. Trump's life hasn't been destroyed by breaking. Oh, look, made up stuff. Trump's life hasn't been destroyed by breaking many laws. No, Trump's life Trump's life is built on breaking laws. Trump is a convicted felon. Did you know that? A huge majority of the population, and we're done with Mark. Everything you say is just like, this is just such a made up. Like, did you really believe that, Mark, that most Americans don't know where Africa is, the continent? Mail-in votes are nearly impossible. No, they're not. That's just, again, do you guys say anything that is true? Like, you just make these ridiculous statements. You know why California takes longer to vote? Because they're verifying that the ballots are real. The only thing states do is refuse to collect information for the federal government to deport people. If the federal government figures out that, well, you know, I agree. I'm an asshole. That doesn't mean I'm wrong. Trump couldn't answer those questions. Should be allowed to be president if he couldn't even be allowed to vote. Donald Trump is a felon. You used to not be allowed to vote in Florida if you're a felon. Mark, based on what you're saying here, if you had to be smart to vote, you would never get to vote. I agree, Sam. All corruption from any source should be crushed. Some of these comments are just sad. When the Q-tip meets resistance, stop pushing. Right. Like, I'm not going to ban Mark because he's not saying anything hateful, but I think I'm done reading your comments because you're making, like, you're running the conversation instead of allowing, like, I want other people to be able to participate, and everything you say is so outlandish and dumb that it's not worth spending time on. Some of these comments, so like what Brett said is right. Some of these comments are just sad. When the Q-tips meets resistance, stop pushing. Over half of the women today I guess we're at the point where there's no more messages being held for review and flagged by YouTube than are appearing. de-evolution. Oh, so yeah. I because I'm I'm on Restream, so I don't know what goes on with all that. Did the displaying comments thing ever get better? I hope it got better. I'm in a union, so I don't vote for Republicans. However, women totally ruined the Democratic Party. How did women ruin the Democratic Party? What does that mean? I don't understand that. How did women ruin the Democratic Party? How did foreigners? Foreigners don't vote. DMV is great in Pennsylvania. I watched you type about 5 different ways to Sunday till it got past the filters. Oh. Yeah, there's a few words that have filters. No, there's something called not suffering fools too, Mark. And I've read about a dozen of your comments, and they're all equally dumb. And sorry, the whole head of household thing. I bet you think that, illegal, that taxation is theft and we're a republic, not a democracy too. Like, I bet you believe a lot of dumb things, and you're not allowed to just own the conversation. How the living poop do I know more about the U.S. Constitution than 1/3 of Americans who still support Donald Trump? It's completely ludicrous. If you go back to Roman slavery, they couldn't give a fornication what color your skin is. The only thing they cared about is how much money you had. Stupid MAGA's in the chat. So looks like Mark is done for. Brett had enough. What's up, my fellow oddities and unconventionals? I'm back like great grandma Betty's arthritis pains. Oh my God, it felt so good to say that again. Don't say racism, it's racial bigotry. What's the difference? What is racial bigotry? Bigotry exists and racism exists. Like, to me, there's some overlap, but they're not the same thing. And they both exist. Hey, John, I thought both words meant the same. Too many words are more confusing. I agree 100%. Goodbye. Racism has a different meaning. I got new ID in Texas. Didn't take 1 hour. Depends on where you're at. You can't even go. You can't go to. Like where I live in Texas. You have to literally schedule an appointment to go to DMV. The backlog is so severe, and it's nothing compared to what it's going to be if you have to go in person to renew your driver's license or update your driver's license or change your name or change your address or whatever. This sounds like one of those big British expressions that this is almost to the level of meriting Scottish. You are as thick as horse poop on a stick. All right. Harley Quinn says that's still illegal. I'm assuming you mean voting illegally is still illegal, and everybody agrees it's illegal. And nobody is contesting that people should be able to vote illegally. All right. So let's say somebody robs a bank in Texas, and so then we say bank robbery is wrong. It should be illegal. Therefore, I am closing down all the banks throughout the entire country. And then somebody says, you're making all these other people and all these other banks suffer because this one bank robbery happened. And you're like, well, bank robbery should still be illegal. And it's like, it is illegal. Nobody's arguing that non-citizens should vote. What we are arguing is that non-citizens don't vote sufficiently to disenfranchise legal American citizens from voting. but they can't be racist. Let me. What I would like, because you have such a distinction in the words. I don't want to argue with you when I don't know what you mean. So if you could explain to me what you perceive to be the difference between racism and bigotry. Because I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't understand what you're saying. It might just be an issue of pedantics. And I don't mean that in a minimizing way. Like we just understand the meaning of the words differently. MAGA boomers just got home from early bird special at Cracker Barrel. They got some home to do some light trawling before bed at 6 p.m. Cracker Barrel is actually pretty tasty, although not very good food. By the way, I've been keeping you guys updated on my food journey. Today I made waffles out of teff flour along with soft white, but it's like 50-50 mix. And if you've ever had Ethiopian bread, like the soft spongy bread that you get in an Ethiopian restaurant, teff is used for that bread. And it's got this kind of barley, or like the kind of a malty, chocolatey taste almost. It's really tasty. And so I made waffles using soft white and teff grain, mill my own flour, as you know. And oh my God, the best waffles I've ever had in my life. I'm telling you guys, if you are not milling your own flour, you've never really tasted flour. And the beauty of it is you start to realize as you do it, like barley has a flavor, white wheat has a flavor, red wheat has a flavor. Soft white is better for things like muffins, and hard white is better for things like bread. You get, ancient grains like spelt, einkorn, emmer, Korshan. You get all different kinds of grain. Each one has a flavor profile, and they're better for different kinds of things. The problem with processed flour is it's sort of one size fits all, and it doesn't, all the flavors taken out of it. But as you get used to milling your own flour and using different kinds of grains, you start to think of the flour as a flavor, not just like a staple to hold everything together. Anyway, I wish I could send everybody that's watching a sample of my teff waffles. They were amazing. And I made a blueberry compote syrup. Oh, so good. My wife took one bite and she's like, this is the best waffle ever. However, most lawyers ask a question at the start of a court case saying, is there a reason why you would not invoke the full extent of the law in this case? Well, I am like over half an hour behind now. So Walter says, any thoughts on yet another Army general leaving the Stalin? Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over Brett Rainbow. Every time I hear Duffy, I think of Buffy the Van. Okay. There's a Duffy the Vampire player joke in there somewhere, something like that, with Stephen Miller serving the part of the vampire. I actually think that a vampire's chart is Stephen Miller's origin story. Any thoughts on yet another Army general leaving? The Stalin purge continues. Every time I see an Army general, especially a white one, retire now, I'm assuming that they were given illegal orders. If the time nobody runs against the incumbent. Oh, hey. Revival Natural. Welcome back. Thanks for joining again. And I would like to say, if this is your first time watching, click that like and subscribe. I appreciate it. So Brett, Revival's one of our newer, and Kitty, meet Revival Natural. She's She joined yesterday. She's got some really smart things to say. Got to go. Real life calls. What is that? I'm fleeing America. Do you have any recommendations for anti-genocide countries? New Zealand. When Big Blue Green, I hope New Zealand is anti-genocide. What Big Blue Green and round and hates America? The world. Oh, that's pretty funny. Please and thank you. Bye, Brett. Good to see you on the TV per household thing. What about people with roommates? Oh, good question. Right. Well, I guess you could, if you have a roommate, you would just be filing as an individual. I spent a lot of time with roommates when I was younger. But anyway, Mark's not here anymore anyway. He got booted. Your opinion or someone courts focusing on arrive instead of entering. Okay, yeah. So this is actually a good. So one thing happens is America has conflated asylum and immigration as being part of the same thing, and they are different things. But in order to declare asylum, you have to be on American soil. That's literally the only condition to request asylum. To be granted it, there are other conditions, but to request asylum, you have to be on American soil. That is the one and only condition. If you read the actual law, which is what I do. So in order to be on American soil, you have to actually cross the border. But you can't cross the border legally. And so they want to say, oh, well, you have to cross the border legally. And so then you have to do it at a port of entry. So you have to do it at an actual border crossing. You can't illegally cross the border. That's what, which is not the actual law says whether you're here legally or not. It says literally the words, regardless of legal status. You can, but then, and I think it was under Biden, they actually administratively changed the rule, but not the law. Which is one of the reasons I say, if you want to change the rules, change the law. This is a problem I had with Biden. But I mean, we have 4 million asylum seekers waiting in line. I'm not saying that's not an issue. I'm saying that issue should be addressed by the law, not by just ignoring the law. So now Donald Trump is saying, so what it was is if you were on the Mexican side of the border and you're like literally one step away from being in America, now you can say, nope, you can't come over here and request asylum. Like you can't take that step. You're not in the country, so you can't request asylum. The border, they can turn you away at the border. Which fundamentally means you can't request asylum at all. Like you can't enter illegally and request asylum, and you can't enter legally and request asylum. So how are people going to request asylum unless they are white people in Africa? Like when only white people in Africa can request asylum, you have a problem that might be just a wee bit racist. And they've got white people requesting asylum under this fake white genocide nonsense. And they're coming over here and they're getting a book that talks about how slavery wasn't that bad. It's disgusting. But yeah, I think it's nonsense. I think it's basically denying the human right to asylum. That's my opinion. It's ignoring the law, and it's ignoring the international law, and it's denying human rights. It is inhumane and illegal. And the Supreme Court sucks. People be like, the Supreme Court just said it's illegal. The Supreme Court said Dred Scott was legal. Or wasn't a citizen. The Supreme Court said Plessy versus Ferguson was legal. Supreme Court gets it wrong sometimes. And this has definitely got shades of that. This is the most Racist Supreme Court since Plessy versus Ferguson, or Supreme Court ruling since Plessy versus Ferguson. I'm genuinely considering fleeing to Canada. The cost is steep, but it's probably the closest good option. Plus free healthcare. It's not that I've looked into it. It's harder than you might think to migrate to Canada. They don't want to have a border crisis. Um, although that's where everybody flees in Handmaid's Tale, right? Um, yeah, voice to text is so much like voice to text will. Uh, voice to text has its own unique errors. It doesn't confuse your and your, for instance. It misunderstands wording sometimes, but it doesn't misspell words. That I love voice to text. That's why I have typos. I just realized you have a British accent. Not that that's relevant to anything, other than I was just kind of thinking voice to text. Why doesn't it come up with a British accent? Why doesn't your text reflect your British accent? That's a joke. I like the British accent. Even this. Hey Google, tell me a joke.
Did you hear about the snowman that got upset when the sun came out? He had a total meltdown.
Boom. But see, even my Google has a British accent. Didn't Trump say the strait was open? If so, that's a blatant falsehood and not even a believable one either. You know, this is going to come as a shock to some of you. I know this is actually really stunning, but sometimes Donald Trump says things that aren't true. Yeah, he said it. It's not. Although there is some confusion over it because, at least initially, I don't know what's going on now. I actually kind of stopped paying attention because it's just got boring fact checking him on this. But what was happening is people were turning off their radar stuff or there's like equipment that measures when people are going through, but like people were going through without that on because they didn't want to set off mines. And so you actually have um, boats that were going through that weren't being tracked. I just have auto incorrect in my phone. Oh, so here's my joke is that I've developed a phone app that you can plug into, like it works with Bluetooth and stuff, and you can run the app and it will tell you like anything that's wrong with your car. Like if you have a problem with your car, you can just use your phone app and it will tell you what's wrong with your car. And I'm calling it autocorrect, but the only thing is it always gets it wrong. Uh, houses aren't. I don't know if that was funny or not. It's hard to tell if my jokes land sometimes. Houses aren't being built, but giant apartment complex owned by corporations are. Right, and houses aren't being built because of the whole "not in my backyard" thing. Like too much bureaucracy, and that's what the housing bill is trying to do: is get rid of all the bureaucracy that's making it impossible for people to build new homes. But yeah, new home builds have been down since the mortgage crisis. Then there are more empty houses than homeless households. The issue is affordability. That ties into it. And that's why I like the approach was to try different things. And it wasn't like you have to do this. This is providing means and ways to do different things. And so and it's a like a lot of problems. There's not just one thing that's causing it, right? And so, like, there are legitimate concerns about bureaucracy, and there are legitimate concerns about affordability, and there are legitimate concerns about people coming in and buying up homes. And so, the housing bill actually endeavored to get both sides' issues resolved. And so, it's not just one thing it did. It's not just saying, you get a free house or whatever. There's a new Trump law against corporations collecting houses. Well, it's not a new Trump law. That's actually the law he refused to sign. That's the housing bill that the Congress passed. And the law is the thing that he refuses to sign unless the Senate approves the SAVE Act. We Iranian won't let strain of Persia operants like before. Nothing will be the same as era before the 28th Feb. You doubt it? We can cut internet cable in the Strait. See it. Okay, I think generally what he's saying is that Iran's not going to go back to having the Strait be open, which we'll see. No, Trump didn't sign the bipartisan bill. Yeah, that I mean, like giving Trump credit for that bill is like way upside down. Both parties of Congress did it. I think it passed the Senate 85 by, and some people didn't vote because they weren't there. Like 85 senators have voted for it. A majority of both parties voted for it. And Trump said he won't sign it until we pass the SAVE Act. And the Senate doesn't even want to pass the SAVE Act. Not even if there wasn't a filibuster would the SAVE Act pass. Because enough Republicans realize they're losing voters too. Let's all stop paying. And you know what? If you're a Republican who would be disenfranchised by the SAVE Act, I believe you should vote. My problem with the SAVE Act is not that it disenfranchises Democrats. My problem with the SAVE Act is it disenfranchises voters. So whether you vote for the Democrats, vote for the Republicans, vote for independent, I don't care. You should be allowed to vote if you're an American citizen over 18. Full stop. Yeah, MAGA only think what they are told to think. And they can think, like, remember when they said no new wars, like before Iran, and now they're all defending the Iran war. Yeah. Veto the housing bill. Republicans don't create bureaucracy, Democrats do. You realize the housing bill cuts bureaucracy. What is the point of making stupid comments? Okay. You're reading the wrong books. Democrats steal elections. Yeah, no. Yeah, we're done with you. So watch CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, BBC, like every news network in the world that says actual news. And then there's like all kinds of websites, newspapers, stuff like that. Just engaging with, I personally look a lot of places for news. I do not look at Fox News, not because it's conservative, but because it says things that are not true. Like consistently, persistently, continuously, they lie. I will read right-leaning news. I don't actually get most of my news from TV. I get most of my news from reading. But yes, just because MSNBC or ABC or CBS or PBS or BBC or CNN or Politico or something that is not Fox News or AOC says something does not mean it's not true. All of those places said that Donald Trump won the election in 2024. Does that mean that Donald Trump didn't win the election in 2024? If Democrats steal elections, why isn't Harris president? It's so funny how they can't steal the election when they have all the power, but they can steal elections when Donald Trump has all the power. When he's the most powerful man in the world, they can steal elections. But when Joe Biden was president, they couldn't steal it. When Barack Obama was president, they couldn't steal it. What's wrong with only voting on election day in person at the polls and presenting valid ID? A lie. Okay, so let's go through these in order. What's wrong with only voting on election day? Not everybody can vote on election day. in person at the polls. Not everybody can vote in person at the polls. And presenting valid ID. Not everybody has ID. That's what's wrong with it. You can be an American citizen and not have the day off. Maybe you're disabled, can't get to the polls. This is, I mean, the entire premise of your question is what's wrong with it? The fact that it's wrong. It's like saying, what's wrong with murder? Well, murder is wrong. That's what's wrong with it. I'm not sure how any of the live streamers that cover politics have so much patience. You know, it's funny that some people think I have like a lot of patience, but my wife is not one of them. Sometimes she'll come in and say, "You're being mean. You're being mean. Stop being mean." And then I have to explain why I was mean afterwards. It is genuinely infuriating because we have enough housing for them. I feel like there should be a way, right? We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Why do we have homeless people? Why do we even have a need for SNAP? It's like I was saying at the beginning of the show. If we cut defense spending 27%, we could save that solves the Social Security issue. If we had national security, we'd spend half of what we spend on health insurance. We spend twice as much per capita on healthcare as most of the free world. Because we're too stupid to think that actually, you get more efficient healthcare through through government funded insurance. America, it's just so ingrained. I think about this a lot. There was an episode of Friends. I don't know if you guys ever watched Friends, but there was an episode where Joey wins this boat raffle, and he's got to learn how to sail, but he doesn't know how to sail. But Rachel Green, her dad was rich and everything, and she grew up learning how to sail because her dad taught her how to sail. And she's like, "I'll teach you how to sail." And so they go, and Joey's like, "Yeah, this is going to be fun." He's sitting there drinking beer. He's having a good time. And Rachel's trying to teach him what to do, and he's not paying attention, and he's making mistakes. And she's yelling at him. And so then at one point he says, he does, like he quits. He's like, "I didn't come here to be yelled at. I quit." And then she's like, "What do you mean you quit? You're a green, and greens don't quit." And Joey says, "I'm a Tribbiani, not a green, and Tribbianis quit all the time." And then Rachel says, "Oh my God, I've been trying so hard to not be my mother. I've become my father." And I think of that as like a good symbol of the United States. We've been trying so hard to not be socialist. We have become fascist. We're like, it's just, we keep pushing ourselves to the right further and further. And now you've got people that think that far left means people are allowed, to have a house, to have healthcare, to have food. If you think that, then you are the extremist, not the people that think, no, you're not allowed that. And I agree. I think it's genuinely infuriating. No, watch Iranian. It's sad that Iran is more trustworthy than Trump, because she's so stupid that they couldn't even rig that. Oh, they didn't try. And it's like so weird. Like, why are you people sudden? How did we get so good at it over the last 2 years while Trump was president? Like, do you actually apply consistency of thought to these things? How did we get all of this power? Like in 2020, when Trump was president, we had the power to steal the election. Then in 2024, we forgot all about it. And then in 2026, now we've got it all worked out again. It's almost like you're just making excuses. How would developed active military get to vote. I think that in the SAVE Act, there's something about like they're saying that active military, if you're on vacation or something, there are certain excuses that they would be valid. But again, this is the state decides those things. In Texas, it's really hard to vote by mail. You can't even vote by mail if you're disabled. You have to like not be able to leave the house. The logistics of the same day in-person voting are impractical. That's another thing. And you have some states where they do things where they number of voters per precinct is not the same. And so like in certain districts, they'll make it so that you have to wait like 25 hours to vote. And in some places you wait 25 seconds to vote. In their districts, it's easier to vote than in the districts they lose. All these that, and the point is, where does the Constitution say you have to vote in person? Where does the Constitution say that you have to vote on election day? Did you know that for like 200 years there was no like one-day election? Like we never had one-day election. That's not how voting worked. You just have to vote by a certain date. All these that have brass neck to die. All these that have the brass neck to die. I think we should punish them with life imprisonment for voter fraud. I don't know what brass neck means. Sorry, Harry, I don't know what brass neck is, but clearly your joke is funny, and it went over my head. All respect, that's a BS, Maximus. Liberals want America to fail as long as it happens under Trump. No. We are bothered that America is failing because of Trump. You will sit there and ignore that America fails while Trump is president because you can't accept that Trump did something wrong. Is inflation high? Is inflation up? Are gas prices up? Are we at war with Iran? Did we fight a war with Iran? Or any of those anything to do with Democrats? You guys are running the whole country right now. You have all three branches of government. 100, you have both houses, and all you can do is give tax breaks to trillionaires, and somehow everything is wrong because of the Democrats. Read a book, psychos. Lots of MAGA feelings on this stream. Excuse the misogynistic term, but this feminization of men was predicted after Reaganomics kicked in. I don't know what that means. No, we really want everyone to have their needs met, which would be a pretty successful thing for our country to do. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we just and again, I think if we talked about things as issues and not sides, we could do so much better as a country. We have the means, we have enough wealth as a nation that children should not go hungry, that people should not go unhoused, and that sick people should not have to declare bankruptcy because they got sick. We have the means to do that. We have enough wealth to do that. I'm not saying we shouldn't have rich people. I think I'm fine with people being rich. I'm saying we shouldn't have people impoverished. And there is a difference between those two things. I'm not saying lower the ceiling. I'm saying raise the floor. Raise the floor so that there is a minimum level that Americans live by, where they have food, where they have housing, where they have healthcare, and where they have education. Just those basic things, where they have clothing. Just the basic needs are met for every American citizen and every legal American resident. Do you think that the country can shut down to give everyone the opportunity to vote at the same time? Why is that no, A, I don't think that. And two, why? Why is that even a thing? Why is that a thing? Why should everybody have to vote on election day? Never heard anybody explain exactly why that is so important to them. How does it hurt anybody if I vote the day before elections? How does early voting hurt you? Does it stop you from voting on election day? Tyler is trolling the next channel now. Oh, did Tyler move on? I've thought for a while, and I mean, I do think election day should be a national holiday, but I don't think you should have to vote on it. It doesn't hurt. Early voting does not prevent anybody from voting, and it does not encourage illegal voting in any way, shape, or form. It just means you have shorter lines on election day. The elderly, chronically ill, physically disabled, how are they supposed to vote? They are citizens just like the able-bodied people. That is voter suppression. And that is a feature, not a bug, because those people are more inclined to vote Democrat. Not saying they all vote Republican, but it's a percentage game. And so if it's like 60-40 and you get these close elections, that can tip who wins. That's the real goal here. You have to understand the SAVE Act is not to ensure the security of elections. That is the real election fraud. That is the real election rigging. It's like saying you started a fire so that your house won't burn down. The law says people must have time from work to vote. It's been done for days. Yes, that's supposed to be the law. Doesn't matter. The law does not say you have to vote on election day, and neither does the Constitution, neither does common sense. But yes, if somebody needs to vote, and tells their boss they need to vote, they're supposed to be allowed time to go vote. So what? Steak with a side of hookworm. USA. Yeah, I live here in Texas. That's how far behind I am. The steak stuff is I'm just getting caught up. Oh man, I really am gonna miss beef. Nobody has done more. Like, I was joking about this. AOC could never do as much to drive people off of beef as Trump is doing. Like, between the hookworm and between DP beef, ground beef is like more expensive than steak used to be. You realize Republicans are a minority. And like, when you start talking about how we had to cheat to win Los Angeles, Elvis has left the building, and the building is your brain, or is your skull, and Elvis is your brain. That's another stream that starts in a minute that I really want to catch. So I'm going to miss him getting to my comments. I'm sorry, Revival. Wow. It's interesting how many people are like, I need to watch other people's streams. So all the police, firefighters, pilots, air traffic controllers, military personnel have left work to vote for defecades. LA is clearly a liberal dominated area. That's why it's falling apart. It's not falling apart. Have you ever been there? They have the legal right to do so. Whether they do it is up to them. All right. Do you think there would be a huge repercussions if they all left work for half the day? Yeah, what if all of air traffic control in a city decided, okay, it's time to go, we got to go vote now? Wouldn't that be just splendid? I'm a progressive and I've changed my views on voting as a right. There needs to be a test. I don't know if there needs to, I think A, that would be unconstitutional. B, there's like shades of Jim Crow to that would be really a problem. I do think, this is what I think on this. You can tell me what you think if you're still here. But what I would like to see is a voluntary test where if you're running for office, especially like Congress or the president, yeah, you take the citizenship test. The same test that immigrants take to become a citizen. You take the citizenship test and your results are made public. I would love to see that, because I would love to see how many congressmen, senators, and Donald Trump did on the citizenship test. I don't think Donald Trump could pass the citizenship test. He might be able to tell the rhino from the elephant and the tiger, but I don't think he could tell the First Amendment from the Second Amendment. Dan Goldman learned taking money from the state that is not real is losing side. Polls are open from 6 a.m. Yeah, and you know what? Early voting is like, yes, you can. Nobody is saying you can't go vote in person. I just don't understand why you have to vote in person on election day. I just don't understand. Why is that important? Go on, tell me. Tell me why that is important. Tell me why it's important. Go ahead. Many emergency servers work 12-hour shifts. Yeah, emergency rooms generally have 12-hour shifts. But it's sort of like moot. You know, it's like, why do I need to argue about whether or not somebody can vote on election day? That's not the conversation. The conversation is, why would somebody have to vote on re-election day? There's zero reason. There's not one logical reason why that should happen. And it's never been the case in the history of our country. The founding fathers did not vote on election day. Or at least, you know, they didn't make it that you had to vote on election. That is an entirely made up thing by Donald Trump. It's never been the case, ever in the history of our country. Racism and bigotry are not the same thing, though they frequently overlap in everyday life. While bigotry is a broad, generalized, okay, so all right. No, this is Harry is talking. Though they frequently overlap, while bigotry is broad, generalized intolerance toward anyone who is different, racism is specific. I think that's, so like racism is not giving job to somebody who's black. Bigotry is assuming that somebody got a job because they were black. Racism exists, but tell me, how often was the term used before LVSNS? I don't know what LVSNS, but yeah, it's not like all of a sudden we just started using the word racism last week or something. I identify as a transparent. I don't get it. And I Kiwi's not like a transphobic person. Oh, identify. Oh, okay, I get it. As transparent. Yeah, all right. So it's not really a pronoun joke, it's a pun. Form of prejudice or discrimination focused entirely on race and ethnic origin. So what? like I've never heard anybody explain why voting by mail is wrong, or why voting, you know, what? So what? Why does it have to be in person on election day, other than Donald Trump said so? Racism exists, but tell me, how often was the term used before Obama? All the time. All the time. That's why before Obama, nobody thought a black person could win. Are you 12? Were you alive before Obama? It was used all the time before Obama. Racism, like, and it's like Obama's fault. Like, blaming racism on the black guy is like peak racism. Racism is a specific to hate derived from race. Bigotry is a broader definition of home derived from things out of people's control mostly. They make dictionary apps. Don't have to guess. Did you know that American bread is designated as cake in the UK? I don't think it should even be qualified as that. I wish I could send everybody that watches this show a free loaf of bread, just so you could taste real wheat for the first time. I have a friend, my wife's cousin's wife. I got her, you know, she was following me on Facebook, and she bought a mill, and she bought some flour, and now she's like making her own bread with fresh milled flour. And she's on the evangelical train for fresh meat. It is a totally different thing. And 12 hours is not 14 hours. Again, it's not whether you can vote, it's whether or not you have to. Also, how do you add 11 chemicals to make fries 11 chemicals? How is that even a possibility? I have no idea. Another thing I've been doing a lot of is fermenting, and I've made fermented fries, which I know that sounds weird, but they are so good. It's like you can, like when I ferment them in a 1.5% brine, and then I can add, like garlic or like a jalapeno and make like spicy fries. You can actually flavor the fries because the things that you put in with it, like the fermenting process, the flavor gets incorporated into the fries, and the process of fermenting makes the fries crispier. Trump has divided the whole world. Trump is sitting there calling everybody that disagrees with him Democrats. But somehow Obama's the one that's being divisive. The amount of crap that pump into American food is unreal, and half of these chemicals are literally illegal across the developed world. Yeah. So I don't know if, not everybody knows this or has, if you're new here, I have lost 75 pounds now. I'm down to 149. My peak weight was 225. And I eliminated processed foods, and I started milling my own bread, fermenting foods, and doing some sprouting, and just taking care of my microbiome, which is a word before I thought was like a weird RFK Jr. type word. But I've been doing that for like about a year and a half now, and I've lost 75 pounds and done away with, I had all kinds of digestion problems that are gone. Even my reflux has been getting better now just by eating healthy. Yeah. Oh, the black guy. All the racism is the black guy's fault. Can you tell me what Obama did that was so divisive? Or do you just blame the black guy? What if the already long line? The thing that Obama did that was so divisive is that there was a Harvard professor who was a black man who was trying to get into his own house. He was drunk. He's trying to get into his own house. A neighbor called. Police came out. They arrested the black guy for trying to enter into his own house. They're like, give us an ID. And so he was like, if I can go in and get my ID, then I can show you my ID. And then he's yelling at the cop, and the cop's like, can you come out here to the porch? Because he couldn't arrest the guy if he was in his house. Guy stepped out onto his porch, and then he arrested him for trying to go into he didn't do anything illegal. But he got arrested. Obama says, maybe a black man entering his own house shouldn't be somebody that you arrest. And that was the divisive thing he did. He believed a black man over a cop. Yeah, Obama's the one that's divisive, and not the people that made a stink about it. What if the already long lines are more than 2 hours long? Yeah, then you have to wait in line until 2 a.m. to be able to vote. If this is your time watching, Kelly is a big fan of Donald. Okay, you said bye, and then you still had more to say. I can offer my opinion on asylum if no one knows it. He has got a very strong opinion on asylum, but asylum in the UK, not asylum over here. Hello, I'm new to your channel. I'm from Florida. I'm sorry. Rosemary. I'm in Texas. I don't know if I'm from Texas. I've lived in Texas longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life. So maybe I'm from Texas now. Canada only really want immigrants that have money and skills for jobs that are in demand. Trump is more full of crap than the New York City sewer system. I like to say that Donald Trump is a poop paradox, because it never stops coming out of his mouth. It never stops coming out of his butt. And he's never any less full of poop than he was before. It's like he is an infinite two-way fountain of poop, and he's still always full of poop. The channel's monetized, so I can't swear. Do you know that German GPSs only take you one place, Poland? Okay. That's an asylum joke. Did you know that Britain is the center of all time? That means the Germans don't sit down for lunch at 1 o'clock till we say so. Have you been to Turkmenistan? I don't know what Turkmenistan is. I have been to Turkey. I think it's pronounced Turkey or something like that. Turkey. It's pronounced differently. No, I think we need to bring back literacy tests, but only for MAGA. Hey, I got back, and you're still on. I am. I'm just like still like, and this is like half an hour ago that you said that. I am like way behind on the comments. New Jersey Congressman Tom Jean Jr. has not been to work since March 5th. Why is he still getting paid for his show job, for a no-show job? Yeah, that's a good question. Fox News legally isn't news. Well, that's so. What it is that Tucker Carlson won a lawsuit by saying that nobody could really believe what Tucker Carlson said because it's an entertainment program, not a news program. I met a guy once. He said, "As long as I work and I am wealthy, I'm going to vote for the Conservative Party." All versions. The thing about the whole, sorry, just to go back, MSNBC had a similar lawsuit against Rachel Maddow, but this was more of it was thrown out on merit. The lawsuit was thrown out on merit in both cases. Like just it didn't have, or it's thrown out without hearing the merits on both cases. It was just standing. But in the Tucker Carlson case, he actually was lying. In Rachel Maddow's case, she was actually telling the truth. But generally speaking, it's harder to sue a network program that is like opinion-based news because you're basically suing somebody for an opinion, unless it's something like election interference, which Fox News ended up having to pay a lot of money for just blatantly lying and knowingly lying. And that was one of the things, is when they got those DMs where they're all talking about how dumb their viewers were. And what was it, Tucker Carlson's producer called them? Like inbred morons or something. I can't remember. Like he actually really insulted the audience more than I could. I met a guy once. He said, "As long as I work and I am wealthy, I'm going to vote for the Conservative Party." Yeah, that's a lot of Republicans. As soon as I retire, I'm going to labor, our version of the Democratic Party, because they will look after my money while I'm retired. Not as much as I disagree with the entire motive behind that voting, as long as it is honest. You know, and here's the thing, is like, we think of the Labor Party as being like the Democratic Party. And I use this as an analogy. We think of New York and London as being on the same latitude because their climates are similar. And, you know, it's like big American city, big European city. But London, if you look at a globe, London is actually further north than Toronto. It's actually way north. It's like 750 miles north of New York City. But we have this kind of Eurocentric thing where we think of them as being on the same latitude. And I think it's similar in the way we view our politics. But if Joe Biden were running, like if you were to take Joe Biden's platform and run for prime minister right now, you would be talking about a massive like 50% increase in defense spending. You would be talking about, you know, privatizing healthcare, privatizing universities. Like even the Conservative Party in the UK is to the left of the Democratic Party in a lot of ways. ever visit a retirement home? Newsmax and Fox all darn day at full volume. Yeah, my wife's uncle, we went to go he's not a retirement home, but we went to go visit him, and it was just always on. Always on. Just annoyingly always on. Ben best best of most ironic thing I heard, the Democrats are looking after my retirement. Yeah, they sure are. Who was president when we George Bush? George Bush was president in 2008. You do realize that UK politics, I, just like Donald Trump was president in 2020, you do realize that UK politics is very different from US politics. But who caused the 2008 financial crisis? Barack Obama initiated. Yes. Barack Obama did not. 2008, Obama was elected in 2008. He was not president in 2008. You mean the Gordon Brown who used pension funds to save people's lives by bailing out the banks, which everyone agrees was necessary, and the idea that the labor government caused the financial crisis is utter BS. It was an American thing that affected. The housing crisis is a complex, nuanced thing, but if you want to point to the biggest cause, it was the deregulation that allowed people to make really, really stupid and bundles of mortgages, and then that caused the whole thing. Like we don't have time to go into it all, and it's like, but generally speaking, yes, it is the Republicans that caused the housing crisis. Bro, we understand it's a trick to get voting numbers down. It is. The problem with housing is location and affordability. You can't buy a house when you're paying 40 grand for a car. And that's the other thing is like, so, the cars are more expensive. Housing is more expensive. Student loans are more expensive. There's something called the Alice Index, which, like the basic things you need to live. And it's like 2.5 times higher than the poverty level. Like most Americans don't make enough money to actually pay for the, like what we would consider essentials. There are more Democrats than Republicans, or Democrats are not as consistent in voting, or there's people that don't identify as Republicans or Democrats. And by the way, the last time the Republicans actually had the majority of the vote, I'm not talking about winning a popular election, but had the majority of the vote, was 2004. And the last time before that was 1988. They've had the majority of votes one time in the last 38 years. Detroit, for example, has 20% of home vacants, 100,000 empty lots. Problem, nobody wants to move to Detroit. What an absurd claim that Democrats enjoy their country failing as long as it's under the watch of someone they didn't vote for. It is an absurd claim. I agree. And still blaming Biden. That's like moving into a house and 2 years later kind of complaining that this is just, back to the MAGA Tourette's thing I've talked about before. Not today, but like they're conditioned to just say things like, but Biden, immigrants, transgender people. Compulsory voting is a basic requirement for functioning democracy. If taxation is compulsory, then voting must be compulsory, or no taxation without representation meaningless. I think New Zealand, if Kiwi is still on here, I think New Zealand has compulsory voting. I like Australia's voting system where election day is a stat holiday and you are fined if you don't vote. Is it Australia that does that, or it's New Zealand? Maybe it's Australia. Got to go. Bye, Kelly. Thanks, Harry. Harry was with me like the entire show, and it's like been a while. We're 3 hours and 15 minutes into it. How do you think the Supreme Court's going to rule tomorrow on citizenship? Are they going to rule? I just I'm hoping, I am just hoping that they actually follow the Constitution on this one. I think they will, but you never know. They don't seem to care much about reality. It is a really terrible court. I know that if they do rule against it, there is going to be a really strong dissenting opinion. If Joe Biden ran on his current policy platform in the UK, he would be he would be the most far right nut job going and receive about 50 votes nationally. The whole idea that he has developed around Gordon Brown and the British financial crisis in 2008 is such dog poop. It's unreal. Congrats to David Downer, the penis head, who managed to convince the British public that the financial crisis was his fault. I mean, people honestly think that the government's borrowing caused the financial crisis. It's just madness. How do people not understand that America failed to regulate their banks, and when their banks went under because of how closely connected our banking systems are, our banks also, yeah, there was I saw this it was actually a couple of British comedians that had this whole discussion on it. This was during the crisis. Like, this is like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, almost. It was like 2009, 2010. It was from a British TV show, and these two British guys that were sitting there talking about it, and they were talking about the whole thing in the context, and it was one of the funniest bits of TV I have ever seen. I'll see if I can find it, and maybe if I can, I'll play it. But it might be hard to find because it's been a long time. So, all right, and that, I think I'm pretty much all caught up on the comments now. And Harry just left. So there's still a few people left, but I think it's time to go. And by that, I mean I really need to go. It's been over 3 hours for me. So have a wonderful day and a pleasant tomorrow. I will talk to you tomorrow, and we will punch you again.